Chapter 96. In the elite disciple area, on the second floor of a pavilion, Chu Mu sat cross-legged on the balcony as usual. He had just finished 30 cycles of the Zhongyuan sword chi art and exhaled a breath of white air that shot out like a sword, stirring the air. Raising his head to look at the endless blue sky, Chu Mu's eyes retracted and became deep. 10 days of cultivation, 30 cycles a day, but the sword chi only grew a little. At this rate, it would take half a year of hard work to reach the middle stage of 9th stage. What a pity! I don't know how to improve my cultivation talent. 9th stage is too low. He sighed slightly, his tone was somewhat helpless. Junior brother. Yuan Wenhua's voice came, startling Chu Mu. It was still early, and usually they would not come so early. He got up and went downstairs. Li Yi, Yuanhua, Wang Tingo, and Xiao Qianfeng, who was rarely seen recently, were all there. In addition, there were 15 elite disciples, and Wenren Yun was among them. Her head was slightly lowered, and her eyes flickered with a shocking light. There was a trace of killing intent circulating, but it was hidden deeply. Senior brother, this is... Chu Mu looked at the group, puzzled. This is the sect leader's order. It seems that something big has happened and we are needed. Li Yi said, let's go see the sect leader and we will know what is going on. Okay. Chu Mu nodded. His sword was always in his hand, so there was no need for preparation. The group of 20 people all went to the Green Peak main hall. In the Green Peak main hall, other than the sect leader Luo Tianxiong, there were also the 3 chancellors and the 11 elders of the main hall. They all looked dignified, as if something big had happened. Chu Mu and the other 20 elite disciples had arrived. Luo Tianxiong glanced at them, his eyes shining, his body imposing, and he went straight to the point. Do you all remember the huge earthquake half a month ago? It was not a landslide. After a period of investigation, it was found that the reappearance of the Green Orchid virtual realm caused the collision of the spatial barrier, which caused the space in the Green Orchid Mountain area to shake. Luo Tianxiong said slowly. Chu Mu and the others almost had a question mark on their heads. Qing Lan virtual realm, space barrier, and so on were beyond their knowledge. The so-called illusory realm of Qinglan is a kind of illusory realm. It is a small independent spacetime that was born naturally or believed to be different from the ancient Sword Continent, but it is attached to the ancient Sword Continent. The void boundary was usually hidden in the void. When it appeared, it would collide with the spatial barrier of the ancient Sword Continent, causing a certain region to shake. Inside the emptiness realm, there are usually all kinds of strange flowers and herbs. Great dangers and great opportunities coexist. Elder Luo quickly explained, the reason why it's called Qinglan Virtual Realm is because it appeared on Qinglan Mountain. Qinglan's virtual realm does not appear regularly. According to the records of our sect, Qinglan's virtual realm has appeared a total of 4 times. The last time was 15 years ago. Luo Tianxiong said seriously. The light in his eyes seemed to have settled and become heavy, making people feel pressured. In Qinglan's virtual realm, there are many spiritual herbs and spiritual fruits, as well as other kinds of treasures. After entering and coming out, one's cultivation will often be improved by leaps and bounds. Of course, it is also full of all kinds of dangers. The slightest carelessness can lead to death. Now that the empty realm of Qinglan has reappeared, the Qinglan Sword Sect and the Qingshui Sword Sect will definitely send people in to search for all kinds of spiritual herbs, spiritual fruits, and treasures to strengthen the Sword Sect. Entering the void realm of Qinglan is limited by one's cultivation level. One must be a swordsman below the Qi transformation realm and above the 7th stage of the Sword Qi realm. Otherwise, it is either because one's cultivation level is too strong to exceed the tolerance limit of the void realm, or because one's cultivation level is too low to be suppressed by the internal power of the void realm. Chu Mu and the others listened attentively. Luo Tianxiong continued to explain, Originally, entering the virtual realm would be best for a 10th stage swordsman or a half-step into the Qi transformation realm. However, because the appearance of Qing Lan's virtual realm is unpredictable and they did not stay in the sword sect, they could not prepare in advance. The three major sword sects made an agreement that every time Qing Lan's virtual realm appears, only 9th stage or lower disciples can enter. On one hand, it is to search for more treasures. On the other hand, it is a kind of competition between the three major sword sections. So this time, 20 of you have been selected. Of course, I will not force you to enter. After all, the virtual realm is full of danger. However, I can guarantee that any disciple who can leave the virtual realm alive will be focused on training by the sect. Reaching the Qi transformation realm is not a problem. Silence, waiting for Chu Mu and the other 20 elite disciples to choose. Such a good place, of course, we have to go in and explore. Li Yi was the first to smile and said, "Haha, how can I be left out?" Yuan Wenhua laughed. "Of course," Wang Tingo said. Everyone expressed their opinions. None of the 20 elite disciples backed down. As swordsmen and elites of the sword sect, they had long known about the brave current. How could they back down because of the danger? Good, good. You are all the pride of our sect. Luo Tianxiong's face showed a smile, nodding with a look of appreciation. The surrounding elders also smiled and were very satisfied. In that case, Elder Luo and the other two elders will lead us to the entrance of the virtual realm immediately. We will not let Qinglan Sword Sect and Qingshui Sword Sect get ahead of us. Luo Tianxiong was swift and decisive. He said decisively, "As for water and dry food, they have been prepared for you. Everyone has a bag and a pot. Bring it with you. Disciples, let's go." Elder Luo and the other two elders led the 23 people quickly left for Qinglan Mountain. I hope they can all come out alive this time. Luo Tianxiong stared at the back of the crowd and said to himself, "The stronger the strength, the higher the chance of survival. Chu Mu and the other 4 should be able to leave alive. The others are in the late and middle stage of Stage 9. Some of them may stay in the virtual realm forever." An elder said softly, "There's nothing we can do about it. Regardless of whether it's for them or for our sect, entering the emptiness realm is a better choice." A few long sighs and disappeared with the wind. The 23 figures quickly went into Qinglan Mountain. About 4 hours later, they came to a small valley. Aside from the people of Qingfeng Sword Sect, there were 2 other groups of people in the valley. They seemed to have just arrived. "Humph, it's the people of Qingfeng Sword Sect. They are really like dogs, coming wherever there is a bone." An elder in the crowd on the right looked cold and sarcastic. He did not hide his sarcasm. "It's better than people who can't change." Elder Luo's expression did not change, and he replied lightly. Suddenly, the elder's expression changed drastically. The veins on his forehead bulged and his breath was fierce. He almost drew his sword. The people on the other side could not help but laugh. "Elder Luo, long time no see. Your words are still so sharp." An elder in the crowd on the left greeted with a smile. "Haha, you flatter me. Elder Yao, long time no see. Your cultivation seems to be much purer." Elder Luo smiled and returned the greeting. In the crowd on the right, there were 3 elders and 20 elite disciples of Qinglan Sword Sect. Each of them looked arrogant, as if they were the gods and everyone had to listen to them. But when they were refuted by Elder Luo, their faces turned red and they almost suffered internal injuries. In the crowd on the left, there were 3 elders and 20 elite disciples of Qingshui Sword Sect. Qinglan Sword Sect claimed to be the orthodox sect of Qinglan Mountain. They were arrogant and did not take Qingfeng Sword Sect and Qingshui Sword Sect seriously. As a result, the friendship between the 2 major sword sects was forged. Chu Mu noticed that there was a person in the crowd of Qinglan Sword Sect who was staring at him with a trace of murderous intent. He turned around and saw that it was Elder Yao Ri. "Haha, Elder Luo's breath is purer and sharper." Elder Yao stroked his beard and smiled. The entrance of Qinglan Void Realm has been opened. It will stabilize in a short period of time. Then we can enter. I hope the disciples of your sect can gain a lot. Elder Luo smiled. I hope so too. Elder Yao also smiled. Are you dreaming? The elder of Qinglan Sword Sect sneered and said, You two are just disciples of two small sects, and you think you can gain something in the void realm of Qinglan? You'd better pray that your disciples can come out alive, not gain anything. Elder Luo and Elder Yao looked at the elder at the same time, but they ignored him. This made the elder's veins bulge. He suppressed his anger and looked at a disciple beside him. Wei Hong, remember, after entering Qinglan Void Realm, your main task is to kill all the disciples of the two sword sections. Kill them all and leave them in Qinglan Void Realm. The elder's sword aura transmitted his voice and said, The secondary task is to help your junior brothers and sisters to get the treasure. When the time comes, we will help you to break through to the Qi transformation realm. The young man called Wei Hong nodded as he smiled coldly. His eyes were filled with killing intent as he glanced past the disciples of the Qingshui Sword Sect and Qingfeng Sword Sect, placing every single one of them on his list of people he had to kill. It had to be said that the idea of the Qinglan Sword Sect was extremely vicious. Once all the elite disciples died in the virtual realm, the two sects would lose a group of elite. The gap between the two sects would be widened by the Qinglan Sword Sect within 10 years. Wei Hong, it doesn't matter if the others can be killed or not. The most important thing is the disciple of Qingfeng Sword Sect, Chu Mu. That's him. Elder Yao Ri also suddenly transmitted his voice to Wei Hong. Wei Hong looked over and his eyes fell on Chu Mu. He was stunned for a moment and then his face was full of disdain. His cultivation is at the early stage of 9th phase, but his swordsmanship is amazing. I'm afraid that even the late stage of 9th phase is no match for him. He can even compete with those at the peak of 9th phase. So, remember, even if you don't kill the others, you must kill Chu Mu. You must not let him grow. Elder Yao Ri felt Wei Hong's contempt for Chu Mu and could not help but speak sternly. Wei Hong's heart skipped a beat and he could not help but look at Chu Mu. He thought to himself, he can defeat those at the late stage of 9th phase and compete with those at the peak of 9th phase. Such swordsmanship can stand out even if he goes there. No, he must die. Chu Mu felt a faint murderous intent. He looked over and just happened to meet Wei Hong's murderous eyes. He could not help but frown slightly, but he was not afraid at all. An unfathomable smile flashed across Wei Hong's face. He stretched out his hand and made a throat-slitting gesture to Chu Mu. He then looked away and looked at the others. In his heart, since Chu Mu was on his kill list, he was already a dead man. At this moment, the entrance to the emptiness realm that was slowly rotating like a whirlpool not far away finally stabilized. It has begun. The elders shouted in a low voice and immediately told the disciples of their respective sects to pay attention to some things and so on. They then let them enter the entrance one after another. Wei Hong, remember your mission. I didn't pay a huge price to cover up your sword aura and cultivation for you in vain. Wei Hong nodded and gave a "don't worry, elder" look. He strode into the entrance of the emptiness realm and disappeared. Thank you to brother_annoyed for your tip and I'm too tired, and Gongru for their monthly vote. In addition, there are 3 chapters from Sapequo, Demonic Lion Dominates, and Mr. M1. If you like this work, you are welcome to come to Chidian.com to vote for me. Your support is my biggest motivation. Chapter 97. This time, the elite disciples of Qingfeng Sword Faction and Qingshui Sword Faction must all be buried in the empty realm of Qinglan. When the time comes, the 2 sword factions will suffer heavy losses while our elite disciples of Qinglan Sword Faction will grow and become stronger. By then, we can suppress the 2 major sword sects, and Qinglan Sword Sect will be the orthodox sect of Qinglan Mountain. The three elders of Qinglan Sword Sect thought about it and stared at the vortex-shaped entrance of Qinglan Virtual Realm. There was a hint of a smile in their eyes. In a trance, it was as if the world was spinning. When he woke up, Chu Mu had already appeared in Qinglan Virtual Realm. Other than himself, there was no one else around. Even Li Yi and the others who had entered the entrance of the virtual realm seemed to have disappeared. Sure enough, once you enter the entrance, you will randomly appear in a place in the virtual realm. If you are lucky, you may be with the disciples of our sect. Elder Luo and the others had told them this before. It also meant that if they were lucky, 1 or 2 or even 3 disciples of their sect would appear in the same place. By then, they could join forces and have a better chance. However, if he was unlucky, he might appear near a powerful dire beast, or in some dangerous terrain, etc. Normal luck meant that a person would appear in a relatively safe place. This was the most common method. Looking around, everything he saw made him feel so inconceivable, as if he was in a dream. The scenery was beautiful and pleasant, the air was fresh. There were mountains, clear water, blue sky, and white clouds in the distance. Nearby there were flowers, trees, and rocks arranged in rows. It was a great tourist attraction. However, Chu Mu raised his vigilance. On the way here, Elder Luo and the other elders had clearly told him that in Qinglan Virtual Realm, he must not let his guard down. Maybe you see a beautiful flower, but it actually contains deadly poison. Maybe you see a very ordinary stone, but it could take your life. Chu Mu's keen intuition made him feel that there was a trace of danger hidden under the beauty and calmness. His left hand clenched and relaxed, adjusting to the most suitable position on the scabbard. The fingers of his right hand flicked gently, trying to relax as much as possible. The muscles all over his body began to relax bit by bit. He was in a state that was neither tense nor relaxed, allowing him to draw his sword and attack in an instant. After looking around, Chu Mu randomly chose a direction and began to slowly move forward. His footsteps were very light, and there was almost no sound when he landed. It was as if his entire body was weightless. At the same time, he was carefully observing the movements in the surroundings. His eyes were sharp and there was a glint in them. He was carefully searching for spiritual herbs and the like. It was said that there were treasures everywhere in the Green Orchid Virtual Realm. Those who were lucky would be able to make great strides in their cultivation. They might even find some powerful swordsmanship, sword skills, and so on. Their strength would improve by leaps and bounds. Legend had it that there were rare treasures that could allow a person to break through to the Qi transformation realm in an instant. Chu Mu didn't know if there were any rare treasures, but the saying that there were treasures everywhere was a lie. It had been a quarter of an hour since Chu Mu had entered the void realm of Qinglan. However, Chu Mu had not found anything of value. Die! A fierce shout shook the surroundings. The sword light was swift and fierce, and sword qi swept out in all directions. Swish! It was like a piece of cloth being torn apart, and blood splattered everywhere. Accompanied by a shrill howl, a figure flew out while bringing along a string of blood droplet. Brother Donglin's sword is even sharper. Lin Jianhai clapped his hands and complimented. Li Donglin shook off the blood on the sword of 100 refinements. His face was cold and his eyes were filled with disdain. He stared at the figure that flew out and rolled a few times. After that, he snorted and said, "It's just a mid-level beast. It's nothing at all. Brother Donglin, mid-level beasts are of no use to us. There's no need to break them down. Well, only those treasures like spiritual herbs can catch our eyes. Keep your eyes open." Li Donglin nodded and said. Their eyes were like lightning as they carefully scanned the surroundings. After finding nothing special, the two immediately turned and left. Brother Donglin, this time when we entered the void realm of Qinglan, the elders gave us 2 tasks. One is to find all kinds of treasures that can be used on ourselves or brought back to the sect to be handed over to the sect. The second is to assist Brother Wei Hong in killing the disciples of the Qinfeng sword sect and the Qinshui sword sect. As long as we kill them all, the two sword sects will cry. Lin Jianhai smiled and looked very happy. Compared to the first task, I prefer the second task. Li Donglin's eyes flashed with a murderous intent. He sneered and looked cold. By the way, Brother Donglin, Elder Yao Ri said that we should pay attention to the disciple of the Qinfeng sword sect, Chu Mu, who is at the early stage of the 9th stage of the sword Qi realm. He said that his swordsmanship is unfathomable. He can even defeat someone at the late stage of the 9th stage, or even fight someone at the peak of the 9th stage. Lin Jianhai looked a little surprised. If that's the case, then we have to be careful when we meet him. Humph, he's just a disciple at the early stage of the 9th stage. Li Donglin heard this and showed a touch of disdain. Elder Yao Ri said this only because his disciple, Su Hualong, was defeated by Chu Mu at the early stage of the 8th stage. At that time, he seemed to be at the late stage of the 7th stage. He didn't know that the reason he was defeated was because Su Hualong didn't have any skills. If it were me, that's true. This Su Hualong doesn't have any skills. He thought that he could reach the sky in one step after being accepted as a pro-disciple by Elder Yao Ri. He didn't even know how to call us brother when he saw us. He is really arrogant. Lin Jianhai smiled and said, If it were Brother Donglin, even if your cultivation is not as good as Chu Mu, you can easily defeat him. Let him know that our Qinglan sword sect is the orthodox sect of Qinglan Mountain. Our elite disciples are the strongest among the 3 major sword sects of Qinglan. Okay, don't flatter me. Li Donglin first flashed a touch of impatience, then it turned into a sneer. I hope we can meet Chu Mu earlier than Brother Wei Hong and the others. At that time, I will use the sword in my hand to behead Chu Mu and give his head to Elder Yao Ri. Let him see that what he is afraid of is actually nothing. That's right. As long as Brother Donglin kills Chu Mu, you can get a reward from Elder Yao Ri and practice a high-level swordsmanship. Lin Jianhai was very eager and almost drooled. One of them was at the late stage of the 9th stage of the sword Qi realm, and the other was at the middle stage of the 9th stage of the sword Qi realm. They talked as they walked, not controlling their volume and hiding the murderous intent in their word. In their words, Chu Mu became more and more worthless. It was as if he had become a piece of trash that could be killed as they wished. Even all the elite disciples of the Qinfeng sword sect and Qinshui sword sect were not in their eyes. Thank you to the 4 swordsmen Dark River Spirit 1 Lockelmore, Q1383, 556, 3351, and other websites are speechless for their monthly votes. Thank you to Celestial777 for your comments. In addition, there was a mistake in Tang Fan's name in the previous chapter. When I checked, I did not notice it. I am very sorry, but everyone is very smart and knows who it should be at a glance. Please continue to ask for subscriptions. If you like this work, you are welcome to come to Qidian.com to vote for me. Your support is my biggest motivation. Chapter 98. Roar. The roar was like rolling thunder, shaking the surroundings. It bared its fangs and its eyes flashed with a green light. It was ruthless and ferocious. Its 4 limbs were tightly fastened to the ground, slightly bent and crawling. It was like a fully drawn bow, ready to shoot out at any time. Chu Mu's body slightly leaned forward. His right hand's fingers moved rhythmically. His eyes were like lightning, emitting a cold light. His gaze fell on the beast 10 meters in front of him without blinking. His aura was condensed like a sword. Once he made his move, it would be earth-shattering. This was a ferocious beast that looked like a wolf, but it was much larger than the fierce toothed wolf. It was like a strong calf, releasing a tyrannical pressure. Its skin was very rough, gray, and hairless. Its muscles bulged, as if it was as strong as a rock. This was a high-level ferocious beast, Gray Rock Wolf. It had the cunning and ferocious nature of a wolf. It also had an incomparably strong body. Its skin was very tough. The fine steel sword could not break it, and the 100 refined sword could only barely cause a slight wound. One man and one wolf faced each other. Their auras were condensed and clashed. They were extremely vigilant. Chu Mu's body slightly swayed, revealing a small opening. The gray rock wolf suddenly roared. Its muscles bulged and contracted, and a terrifying power burst out. With a bang, the grass was smashed and splashed. The sound of air breaking rang out, and the wolf turned into a gray arrow that shot out like lightning. It was too fast. Chu Mu only saw a flash of gray in front of his eyes, and he smelled a strong stench. The wind was incomparably fierce. The claws that shot out were flashing with a sharp cold light, like the claws of the Grim Reaper. His pupils slightly shrank, and a sharp light like a sword appeared. Under Deshang's gaze, the gray rock wolf's figure was clear. The trajectory of its claws was completely presented in Chu Mu's eyes. His right hand moved like a phantom as he pulled out his sword. There was an ear-piercing sound, like the friction of divine metals. The sword light flew out like a flash of lightning, drawing an arc like a waning moon. The sword slashed out, accurately cutting into the chest of the gray rock wolf. The sharpness of the pseudo-sword was perfectly displayed. With a chi-la sound, the gray rock wolf let out a mournful cry. Its huge body flew to one side, splashing a string of blood into the sky like fireworks. With a bang, the ground shook slightly. After sliding for a few meters, the gray rock wolf struggled to get up. Large amounts of blood gushed out from its wound, dyeing its gray skin red and dripping onto the ground. Like a gust of wind, Chu Mu's figure flashed and appeared above the gray rock wolf's back. With sword chi on his blade, he swung his sword. The fake clear wind sword cut into the gray rock wolf's neck like cutting through tofu. There was no obstruction at all. The sword cut off the wolf's head and blood spurted out like a fountain. Chu Mu landed on the ground and swung the sword lightly. There was not a single drop of blood left on the sword. A satisfied expression appeared on his face. The gray rock wolf's skin was incomparably tough, almost comparable to rock. Even the 100 refinements sword could not damage it, but the fake clear wind sword could easily break it. If Chu Mu had used the 100 refinements sword this time, it would have taken a lot of hard work to kill this gray rock wolf. The gray rock wolf is a high-level vicious beast. Its strength is comparable to a 9th phase sword practitioner. Who knows, there might be some treasures in its territory. After searching carefully, Chu Mu found something. On a half-meter tall grass, there were 3 blood-red fruits the size of longans. They had a faint sweet smell like fresh blood. Scarlet blood fruits that have just ripened. Chu Mu was slightly surprised. He took out a small wooden box and carefully picked the 3 scarlet blood fruit. The scarlet blood fruit was a mid-rank spirit herb. It could be consumed or used to refine pills. Its use was to replenish blood. If one was injured and lost a lot of blood, consuming the scarlet blood fruit would be able to replenish it in a short period of time. Although he did not need it now, it did not mean he would not need it in the future. Not to mention, the value of a mid-rank spirit herb was not low. It was even higher than the 3 sun fruit. Chu Mu was putting away the scarlet blood fruits when he heard footsteps behind him. Someone was approaching. After putting away the small wooden box, Chu Mu quickly turned around. 2 figures came into view. When they saw Chu Mu, there was a sneer on their faces. There was a cold glint in their eyes, like a cat staring at a mouse. Disciples of the Qinglan sword sect. Through the logo on their green robes, Chu Mu recognized their identity. He also saw the malicious intent in their eyes. Senior Brother Donglin, our luck is really good. It seems that Senior Brother is going to learn a high-level swordsmanship. Lin Jianhai immediately smiled flatteringly. When the time comes, Senior Brother Donglin must teach us a thing or two. Don't worry, once I learn a high-level swordsmanship, I will not forget you. Li Donglin sneered again and again. He had already regarded Chu Mu as a dead soul under his sword. Holding his sword, he walked towards Chu Mu. Lin Jianhai smiled, and followed by his side like a loyal henchman. Chu Mu, right? Now I'll give you a chance. Kneel down and kowtow to me 3 times. Maybe I'll spare your life if I'm happy. Li Donglin walked slowly and sneered, full of oppression. Yes, kneel down immediately. Otherwise, you'll die a horrible death. Lin Jianhai echoed. You two are nothing but chickens and pottery dogs? Chu Mu smiled and said lightly. It seems that you have a death wish. Li Donglin's expression changed and his face became gloomy. There was a murderous glint in his eyes and his voice became cold. Remember my name. He will be the one to send you to hell. My name is Li Donglin. His voice was like a cold wind. When it blew, a cold sword light bloomed in front of them. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. It was like flying leaves were blown by a strong wind. They were fierce and filled with killing intent. The air was cut into countless pieces. Good, senior brother's flying leaves sword technique is even stronger. Lin Jianhai shouted as if he could see Chu Mu's miserable appearance covered in blood. Chu Mu felt that his whole body was locked down. There was a bright light in his eyes, and he could see the trajectory of the flying leaves clearly. He could also see Li Donglin behind the flying leaf. Such a sword technique. Chu Mu sighed softly and a trace of disapproval flashed in his eyes. Compared to Li Yi's group and Xiao Qianfeng, there was obviously a gap. He immediately drew his sword. The sword light was like lightning and aurora. It was dazzling and dazzling. Lin Jianhai exclaimed and couldn't help but cover his eyes with his hands. Li Donglin only felt that his sword light was like ice under the scorching sun. The fierce, killing intent in front of him was unbelievably fast. It caused Li Donglin's eyes to turn white, as if he had become blind. He felt a strong sense of danger and subconsciously dodged to the side. But he was still one step too slow. He only felt a cold and sharp sword cut through his neck. An intense pain quickly spread throughout his body and his whole body twitched. When the dazzling sword light dissipated, Lin Jianhai only saw Chu Mu standing there with a sword in hand. His face was indifferent and blood dripped from the tip of the sword. Li Donglin was lying on the ground. The 100 refined sword fell to the side and his limbs twitched slightly. His eyes were white and there was a mixture of fear and regret on his face. His neck was cut in half and fresh blood gushed out as if it was free, dyeing the grass below him red. The smell of blood permeated the air and became thicker. Lin Jianhai's expression was sluggish and filled with disbelief. He stared blankly at Li Donglin's twitching corpse. A second later, he screamed and took 2 steps back. He raised his head and looked at Chu Mu. His face was pale and his eyes were wide open. His pupils were trembling and the finger he pointed at Chu Mu was also trembling. You actually killed him. Do you know that he is senior brother Donglai's younger brother? You are dead, you are dead. Senior brother Donglai will not let you go. His voice was trembling and filled with fear. Suddenly, he thought of something and Lin Jianhai's expression changed again. He turned around like lightning and used his sword qi to form an armor. He used his movement technique and rushed forward like a bolt of lightning, intending to escape. Chu Mu's eyelids trembled and his gaze was like lightning. He used the travel in the wind movement technique and rushed forward like a gust of wind. The fake clear wind sword slashed out. With a poochie sound, Lin Jianhai's sword qi armor could not withstand the sharpness of the fake clear wind sword. Under the sword qi was immediately torn apart. Blood spurted out from the back of his robe, and his whole body flew forward under the great force. The sword qi blasted into the wound and expanded it. Blood spurted out like a fountain. However, Lin Jianhai was not dead yet. His hands clawed at the ground as he struggled to get up. He staggered and was thrown forward. His face was pale and filled with fear. Chu Mu stopped and waved his sword to release a sword qi. It tore through the sky and heavily bombarded Lin Jianhai's back. With a pring sound, the sharp sword Qi once again tore open a wound on Lin Jianhai's back. Lin Jianhai's whole body flew forward and landed heavily on the ground. He struggled to get up, but he was powerless. He barely managed to turn around. His eyes were blurry and he vaguely saw a figure striding towards him. There was a cold and dazzling light in his hand. "No, don't kill me." Lin Jianhai's voice was weak. Because of the excessive blood loss, he was dizzy and barely managed to speak. "Why do you want to kill me as soon as you see me?" Chu Mu walked to Lin Jianhai's side and pointed his sword at him. The cold and sharp aura made Lin Jianhai's whole body tremble and slightly sober. Don't kill me," Lin Jianhai repeated. "Speak quickly, or I will end you." Chu Mu shouted and released a trace of killing intent, making Lin Jianhai tremble again. It's Elder Yao Ri's order. Whoever kills you will be able to learn a high-level sword art from him," Lin Jianhai said intermittently, and Elder Qing Mu also ordered me to kill all the elite disciples of Qinfeng Sword Sect and Qinshui Sword Sect. "Kill all of them? Is that even possible?" Chu Mu heard and sneered. So Elder Qing Mu used his cultivation to conceal senior brother Wei Hong's sword Qi and disguised himself as a stage 9 disciple to enter the emptiness realm. Lin Jianhai said weakly. Blood kept flowing out. He felt the footsteps of death approaching and hurriedly begged, "I beg you, let me use the hemostasis pill, or I will die." "What is Wei Hong's cultivation?" Chu Mu asked. "Stage 10. Peak of Stage 10. Lin Jianhai hurriedly replied. "You are very cooperative. Since that is the case, I will spare you from pain," Chu Mu said and swung his sword. Before Lin Jianhai could react, a dazzling sword light flashed in front of his eyes. He felt a pain in his heart and his whole body twitched. His vision quickly turned dark and he died. A high-level sword art. "To kill me, Yaori is really good." Chu Mu sneered and his eyes were full of killing intent. "There is also a Stage 10 disciple who disguised himself as a Stage 9 disciple to enter here. He wants to kill all the disciples of Qinfeng Sword Sect and Qinshui Sword Sect. What a good plan. If that is the case, then don't blame me for being rude. Qinlan Sword Sect, none of you will leave here alive. Thank you to Little Pot Guormin for the tip. Thank you to Little Pot Guormin, Little Boy Andy Lau, Moonshadow Flowing Dress, Burmese Duo Yuhua, Heavenly Sword Xiao Yao, and Chuni for their monthly votes. Also, I have to say that the number of collections is increasing but the number of subscriptions is decreasing. This is not logical. I am deeply affected and feel weak. Swordsman, the samsara needs your passion, your support, and your subscriptions. Only by crying and begging for subscriptions will I be motivated. After midnight, it would be a new month. If Chu Mu went crazy, wouldn't the swordsman go crazy as well? We can't fall behind on our subscriptions and monthly ticket. Let's swing our swords and kill our way up. If you like this work, you are welcome to come to Qidian. Come to vote for me. Your support is my biggest motivation. Chapter 99. The disciples who entered the virtual realm of Qinlan were all carrying chi recovery pills, hemostasis pills, and incense wooden boxes. Li Donglin and Lin Jianhai didn't find anything good. Thus, Chu Mu only found a few things on their corpses. Better than nothing, he put them away. Ignoring the bodies, Chu Mu picked up his sword and walked forward again, carefully searching the surroundings. Senior sister, leave quickly. Senior sister, leave here quickly. When you get out, you must tell the elders. A few screams sounded, startling the surroundings. Yao Bifeng, who was running in a panic, had tears in her eyes. She looked back and saw the sword light flashing. Her junior brothers and sisters fell one by one in a pool of blood. They looked at her with their eyes wide open. Their eyes were heavy with hope and hoping that she could escape. Gritting her teeth, Yao Bifeng held back her tears. She reached out and wiped them away. Her face was full of determination. Her eyes flashed with unforgettable hatred. Junior brothers and sisters, you will not die in vain. When I leave the virtual realm of Qinlan, I will tell the elders about this. The elders will definitely seek justice for you." Yao Bifeng screamed in her heart. Her anger was rising and her hatred was monstrous. The disciples of the Qinlan sword sect will be punished for what they have done. As for me, I will definitely avenge you and kill this Wei Hong. He escape? Do you think you can escape? Wei Hong had a gloomy smile on his face. His eyes were shining with a touch of playfulness. He shook off the blood on the sword. The sword immediately became dazzling. He stuck out his tongue, licked a drop of blood on his lips, and sucked it into his mouth. There was a flash of intoxication. This is interesting. The virtual realm of Qinlan is like a cage, and you are the prey in the cage. I am the only hunter. Now let me, the hunter, slowly find all of you and then kill all of you one by one. This process is really enjoyable. Wei Hong took a deep breath. There was a cruel smile on his face. His face was full of enjoyment, just like a drug addict. After that, he dashed out directly. His figure flashed like a sword, and his speed was extremely fast as he swiftly chased after Yao Bifeng. Only 3 corpses were left on the spot, their eyes filled with unwillingness and fear. "Run, why aren't you running anymore? Are you out of strength? Why don't I give you some time to take a good rest before you run?" Wei Hong said with a mocking expression, his eyes flickering with murderous intent as he sneered. "You're not a Phase 9 cultivator, you're a Phase 10 cultivator. How did you enter this place?" Yao Bifeng was gasping for breath. Her hair was disheveled, and her robe was torn in many places. She looked particularly miserable. "Qinlan Sword Sect, how dare you violate the agreement of the 3 sects and allow a disciple of the 10th level to enter here? You've broken the rules. I'll expose you when I get out." "Rules? Haha, rules are made by the strong." Wei Hong's eyes flashed with a touch of disdain. "Moreover, do you think I'll let you leave here alive? Be buried in the empty realm of Qinlan. With such a beautiful scenery, you won't be wronged. Don't even think about killing me." Yao Bifeng gritted her teeth and stared at Wei Hong with hatred. She clenched the sword of 100 refinements so tightly that the veins on the back of her white hand bulged. Her eyes were almost spitting fire. "You're so beautiful. It's really a pity to kill you like this." Wei Hong laughed sinisterly, causing Yao Bifeng's expression to change greatly. She involuntarily shrank back. Barely carrying less than half of the sword aura, Yao Bifeng shouted and slashed out 2 intersecting sword aura. It swept across the grass and swept up countless grass pieces to kill Wei Hong. She quickly turned around and used her body movement to run away. At the same time, she took out the energy recovery pill and threw it into her mouth. Child's play. Wei Hong smiled evilly. His body swayed and shuttled through the intersecting sword aura. His footsteps were fast, bringing up countless grass pieces. He chased after her, his robe fluttering. The sword light was like a waning moon. It slashed through, bringing a stream of blood and a head flying high. With a flick of his hand, the blood beads flew out and the sword body shone brightly. The fake sword was not only sharper and tougher, but it would also not be stained by blood. It could be easily thrown away and saved the swordsman from wiping it. It's just a mid-level beast, equivalent to the cultivation of level 8. Chu Mu put the sword back into the scabbard and thought to himself. Suddenly, his ears trembled slightly. Chu Mu looked back and saw a flustered figure fleeing in panic. It was a female swordsman. Looking at the logo of her clothing, she was an elite disciple of the Qin Shui sword sect. Yao Bifeng also saw Chu Mu and recognized that Chu Mu was an elite disciple of the Qinfeng sword sect. She suddenly felt happy and felt that she had met her savior. She did not need to be killed. Immediately, her eyes dimmed. She also saw that Chu Mu's cultivation was only at the early stage of level 9. With such strength, he would only be a dead soul if he encountered Wei Hong. "Leave quickly." The Qinglan sword sect has violated the agreement of the three sections. They let a level 10 disciple sneak into the virtual realm and tried to kill the disciples of both sections. Leave quickly and tell the others. Bring this news out of the virtual realm and tell the elders. Yao Bifeng shouted. Her voice spread around and fell into Chu Mu's ears. She felt that she could not escape from Wei Hong's evil hands. Since that was the case, she would spread the news and let every elite disciple of the Qinfeng sword sect and the Qinshui sword sect know. When the time came, as long as someone got out alive and reported the news, the Qinfeng sword sect and the Qinshui sword sect would unite and put pressure on the Qinglan sword sect. Although the Qinglan sword sect was the most powerful sect, they could not win against the combined forces of the two sections. In the end, they would have to apologize and take the corresponding punishment. Wei Hong also saw Chu Mu. After a moment of surprise, he showed a look of joy and laughed. Ha 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 ha. I didn't expect to meet you so soon, Chu Mu. His speed suddenly increased and his body flew across the sky like an aurora. In a flash, he passed Yao Bifeng and rushed toward Chu Mu. Yao Bifeng felt a figure fly past her. When she saw that it was Wei Hong, she was so scared that her face turned pale. However, she found that Wei Hong did not pay attention to her and went toward Chu Mu. She knew that Wei Hong's plan was to kill the two of them. Wei Hong. Chu Mu stared at Wei Hong, who rolled up a gust of wind and blew 10 meters in front of him. He said faintly, "So it's you. It seems that you already know who I am." Wei Hong was stunned for a moment and then showed a gloomy smile. "Very well. In this way, I don't have to go through the trouble of introducing myself. But I'm curious, how did you know who I am?" Yao Bifeng stopped and stood 10 meters away. The three of them formed an irregular triangle. Her face was full of despair. After escaping and being chased several times, she knew that with her cultivation, there was no way she could escape from Wei Hong's pursuit. Even if there was an early 9th phase swordsman, it would still be impossible. In her heart, she could not help but feel a sense of despair. Go ask the two disciples of the Qinglan sword sect. They will tell you the details. Chu Mu said faintly. Wei Hong heard this and his pupils suddenly shrank. A murderous look appeared in his eyes and spread out. You killed 2 of our disciples. You deserve to die. Wei Hong's face was gloomy and his eyes were scarlet. He was like an evil spirit making people shudder. His voice was like a cold wind from hell. Yao Bifeng's body unconsciously trembled. She looked at Chu Mu's eyes with a bit of disbelief. This early 9th phase disciple of the Qinfeng sword sect killed 2 disciples of the Qinglan sword sect? It seemed unlikely. One must know that among the elite disciples of the 3 major sword sects who entered the virtual realm, only Chu Mu's cultivation was the lowest. He was at the early 9th phase. The others were at least at the middle 9th phase. To be able to kill a middle 9th phase disciple, this showed that this person's swordsmanship was extraordinary. Unfortunately, he was going to die here. You deserve to die even more. Chu Mu raised his eyelids. There was an amazing sharpness in his pupils that went straight to Wei Hong's scarlet eyes. The fierce murderous look made Wei Hong's eyes tremble. There was a feeling that he did not dare to look directly. Chu Mu's tone was even more indifferent. With the cultivation of the peak of the 10th phase, you pretended to be at the 9th phase and entered the virtual realm of Qinglan. You deserve to die. With a scream, countless birds were startled. Chu Mu had already pulled out his sword and turned into a dazzling rainbow. In an instant, he crossed 10 meters and stabbed at Wei Hong. In the face of a strong enemy at the peak of the 10th phase, Chu Mu did not dare to relax. He was not sure whether he was the opponent of the other party. The amazing murderous look was earth-shattering. It was like lightning breaking through the sky. It was so dazzling that Yao Bifeng could not help but close her eyes. The speed made Wei Hong's pupils shrink. He was extremely shocked. What a fast sword! Let me cut your sword in half. Wei Hong shouted in his heart. The sword was like a thunder explosion cutting through the void. It was extremely shocking. It was too fast. The two swords collided. Under the shock of a huge force, Chu Mu flew back to remove the rebound force. His palm was slightly numb. Wei Hong, on the other hand, was extremely shocked. He stared at the sword in Chu Mu's hand. A fake sword. You also have a fake sword? Wei Hong screamed, full of disbelief. Is it strange? Chu Mu sneered and said, This sword has drunk the blood of 2 elite disciples of the Qinglan sword sect. You will be the third. Since learning of the conspiracy of the Qinglan sword sect, his hatred for the sect had intensified. He had made up his mind to kill all the disciples of the Qinglan sword sect that he encountered in the virtual realm. He would let the Qinglan sword sect suffer the consequences of their own actions. Even if Wei Hong was at the peak of the 10th phase, Chu Mu would never let him go. He was the one who had to be killed. Humph, a fake sword in the hands of a mere 9th phase swordsman is a pure waste. Wei Hong recovered and said with a smile, Don't worry, after I kill you, I will take your fake sword away. When the time comes, whether you want to contribute it to the sect or sell it yourself, it will be a good choice. Don't worry, after you die, your fake sword will also fall into my hands and be used by me. Chu Mu was not at a disadvantage when it came to words, as long as he was willing. It was just that sometimes he was too lazy to say it. When the time comes, I will use it to kill all the disciples of the Qinglan sword sect in the virtual realm. If you like this work, you are welcome to come to Qidian. Come to vote for me. Your support is my biggest motivation. Chapter 100. Kill! With a loud shout, Wei Hong's sword light shone brightly, burning with red flames. The surroundings were scorching hot as it rushed toward Chu Mu like a fire python. It was extremely powerful, and the air seemed to be ignited. Waves of roars were heard as if it was some kind of ferocious beast. High-rank sword art. Chu Mu's heart skipped a beat. Such power was far beyond the mid-rank sword art. Yao Bifeng's eyes reflected the red flames. Her face was full of shock. With her knowledge, she naturally recognized that Wei Hong was using the basic form of a high-rank sword art. The power of an advanced sword art was far greater than that of an intermediate sword art. Even the power of a basic sword art could easily have the power of a low-level sword art. Every basic sword art was equivalent to a low-level sword art's killing move. Moreover, the sword chi consumed would not be as much as using a low-level sword art's killing move. It would be endless, which was very terrifying. The scorching heat rushed toward his face. As he breathed, the air became scorching hot. It rushed into his nostrils, making Chu Mu feel very uncomfortable. He frowned slightly. The red flames reflected in his eyes rapidly approached. The scorching heat seemed to want to ignite his whole body. It is even more powerful than the Cloud Sea sword art of eldest senior brother. Thinking to himself, Chu Mu quickly retreated. At the same time, his wrist rotated at high speed. The sword light flashed, and the fake clear wind sword spun at high speed along with his wrist, forming a tornado. Chu Mu used a trace of his wind mentality. In an instant, a large amount of air was pulled over, forming a wind whirlpool. It absorbed all the scorching heat in the air. With a low shout, he pushed forward and stabbed out with his sword. A blazing vortex of wind shot out, instantly colliding with Wei Hong's sword. With a bang, an explosion occurred. Sword chi swept out, slicing through the air and slicing apart the grass on the ground. As sparks flew, Wei Hong's sword paused for a moment. Chu Mu used wind walk, floating to Wei Hong's left like a wind spirit. He casually swung his sword, leaving no trace behind. Wei Hong's expression changed slightly. He hurriedly turned around and slashed out with his sword. It was as if a raging wave of flames had swept up as it fiercely slashed towards Chu Mu. Chu Mu's sword light rotated, and the tip of his sword lightly touched Wei Hong's sword. With an ear-piercing clang, Wei Hong's sword was knocked away, and Chu Mu's sword stabbed towards Wei Hong's throat. He waved his left hand, and 3 scorching sword chi shot out towards Chu Mu. They were extremely powerful, and because of the high temperature, they let out crackling sound. Chu Mu turned his body and dodged the three-sword chi. He focused his mind, and the sword chi outside his body surged. It condensed into a faint arc of light and shot out. At the same time, the fake clear wind sword swept up a light blue wind. It was extremely fast, and there was nothing it could not penetrate. Shwa shwa shwa. Wei Hong hurriedly waved his fake sword, and countless fiery red sword shadows formed a wall in front of him, blocking Chu Mu's attack. At the same time, he flew back and waved his sword continuously. Streaks of fiery red sword chi flew towards Chu Mu, fast and fierce. Yao Bifeng's eyes could not take it all in. Her face was full of shock. She could not imagine that an early-stage 9th phase sword artist could fight with a peak 10th phase sword artist in such an intense battle. It was like a dream. Even if this peak 10th phase sword artist did not use his full strength, he was still an existence that could not be resisted. For no reason, a glimmer of hope appeared in Yao Bifeng's heart. She hurriedly took out several energy recovery pills and threw them into her mouth to recover her sword chi. Her beautiful eyes stared at Wei Hong and Chu Mu, and they shone brightly. I thought that Elder Yao Ri's worries were unnecessary. I didn't expect that he still underestimated you. Wei Hong stared at Chu Mu, his eyes as sinister as a viper's. He stared straight at Chu Mu, and his voice was incomparably cold. He did not hide his killing intent at all. You are qualified for me to use my full strength. High-grade fire python sword art, I will send you to your grave. After saying this, without waiting for Chu Mu to reply, Wei Hong attacked again. This time, the attack was even more powerful. When the sword pierced out, it actually condensed into a thick fire python. It opened its mouth and roared like a high-level fierce beast. It was incomparably ferocious. Moreover, the blazing aura was even more intense. The air trembled and exploded. The thick fire python viciously charged at Chu Mu, as if it wanted to swallow Chu Mu in one gulp. So strong. Chu Mu was shocked. Wei Hong's fire python sword art was a fire-type sword art. Fire-type sword arts had always been known for their destructive power. Moreover, it had the special effect of high temperature. It felt like it was even more powerful than Li Yi's Cloud Sea sword art. Chu Mu's eyes slightly squinted. A light cyan luster blew through his pupils like a gust of wind. Under the great success of sword vision, he was able to clearly see the trajectory of Wei Hong's sword. However, whether it was the power of the sword art or the purity and strength of the sword chi, Chu Mu was far inferior. Unless he directly used the breeze kill under the concept of wind. Chu Mu used all his strength to use the wind walk movement technique. Following the air currents brought by the roaring fire python and the trajectory of Wei Hong's sword, he easily dodged. Let's see how long you can dodge. Wei Hong shouted, and the sword chi around him surged violently. One sword after another, he used the basic move of the fire python sword art. Although the speed was not as fast as the breeze sword art, the power was much stronger. Every sword caused the surrounding air to become shockingly hot. The green grass on the ground quickly turned yellow because of the high temperature. As Chu Mu dodged, he saw thick fire pythons appearing one after another in front of him. They all roared and bit at him. Once he was hit, even the invisible protective sword chi would not be able to protect him. Yao Bifeng stared at Wei Hong, trying to see his every move clearly. At the same time, she continuously recovered her sword chi. Kill! 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 Wei Hong roared and waved his fake sword again and again. His entire body became a fiery red area and a high temperature spread out. If it weren't for Chu Mu's formless sword aura isolating him from the heat, he would probably feel uncomfortable all over and his condition would be greatly affected. Using the wind travel movement technique to the extreme, Chu Mu was like a cool breeze, constantly brushing past the fire pythons that bit at him. It seemed to be extremely dangerous, but Wei Hong couldn't do anything about it. Taking advantage of that brief moment, Shao Chen thrust out his sword a few times. It was the basic move of the clear wind sword art under the concept of wind. Each sword was like a gentle breeze, blowing the fire python to the side and stabbing towards Wei Hong. Damn it! Wei Hong's expression became even more unsightly. With his cultivation and sword arts, he was still unable to kill an early-stage 9th phase cultivator after such a long time. Once this spread back to the Sword Academy, he would lose all his face. His feet were like flames. Wherever he landed, the grass would quickly wither, leaving behind clear marks. Wei Hong's entire body seemed to be on fire. Sword aura revolved around his body, directly resisting Chu Mu's clear wind sword technique. Kill! A thunderous roar rang out. Wei Hong's sword was even more powerful and ferocious. It was earth-shattering, as if he wanted to kill Shao Chen with one sword strike. Peak 10th phase sword chi was released without holding back. An extremely powerful pressure shook the surroundings. A terrifying repelling force pushed away the air, causing bits of grass to fly into the air and burn to ashes. Chu Mu only felt waves of heat assaulting his face, forcing him to retreat. This is not good. This fellow's sword chi cultivation far surpasses mine. Adding on the difference in purity, the overall difference is at least 10 times greater than mine. If he uses his full strength, I won't be able to get close to him, Chu Mu thought with a frown as he used the momentum to retreat. Even though he was a sword grandmaster, had Deshang's sword vision, and had external sword chi, the purity of his internal sword chi was far inferior to Wei Hong's. What he had could only make him undefeatable, but it would be difficult for him to defeat Wei Hong. Even if I condense all my external sword chi into my sword and temporarily merge it with my internal sword chi, it will still be difficult to kill him. Moreover, doing so will take some time. Chu Mu thought to himself. The only reason he was able to use it before was because he only had a sword duel with Shao Qianfeng. In a life-and-death battle like this, even a second could change the situation. If I use the simplified version of wind, I might be able to defeat or even kill him. However, with my current sword chi cultivation, it's still not enough to use the complete simplified version of wind. If his cultivation was only at the early 10th phase, it wouldn't be too difficult to kill him if I used my full strength. However, the difference between the peak of 10th phase and him is too great. For the first time, Chu Mu felt helpless. He deeply understood that as a swordsman, the most important thing was not only sword arts, but also sword chi cultivation. No matter which aspect was protruding, it wasn't true strength. It was like the edge of a wooden barrel. If there were some protrusions, the water wouldn't be able to fill it. Therefore, only by advancing both sword arts and sword chi simultaneously could a truly powerful swordsman be called a true swordsman. If it was one-sided, it would only lead to abnormal growth. Even if one's sword arts attainments were unfathomable and could surpass a stage in battle to kill an enemy, when faced with a stronger sword chi cultivation and a stronger sword art, one would be suppressed. On the other hand, even if one's sword chi cultivation was incomparably dense, when faced with an enemy whose sword chi cultivation was similar to yours and whose sword arts attainments far surpassed yours, one would still be suppressed. The most direct comparison was between the sword chi realm and the chi transformation realm. A chi transformation realm expert could stand still and rely on their protective sword chi to casually attack a sword chi realm swordsman without being harmed in the slightest. But now, Wei Hong had used the full strength of his 10th phase peak sword aura. It filled the surroundings and created a powerful repelling force that prevented Chu Mu from approaching. If he couldn't get close, then it would be difficult to use his unpredictable sword arts. It would be difficult to break through Wei Hong's defense with just the clear wind sword art. If this continued, Chu Mu's sword chi would be exhausted first, and then the situation would not be good. I can only leave first and find some spirit medicine to raise my cultivation to the peak of 9th phase. At that time, I should have enough sword chi to use the simplified version of the wind appearance. Chu Mu thought to himself, then looked at Yao Bifeng and said in a low voice, "Hurry up and leave." Yao Bifeng was surprised at first, but she reacted quickly and quickly waved her sword, sending out several sword chi towards Wei Hong. She quickly turned around and used all her strength to escape. At the same time, Chu Mu merged the concept of wind and used the clear wind kill. A 1-meter-long light blue wind blade broke through the air, as if it could cut through space, and attacked Wei Hong. Yao Bifeng's sword chi hit the sword chi around Wei Hong's body, and they were all dispersed. However, Chu Mu's clear wind kill arrived and ruthlessly cut through the sword chi around Wei Hong's body, and attacked his body. Wei Hong's face changed, and he hurriedly waved his fake sword, rolling up a fire python and destroying the weakened clear wind kill. "Don't even think about escaping." With a loud shout, Wei Hong didn't even look at Yao Bifeng, and used all his strength to chase after Chu Mu. Wei Hong already had a strong desire to kill Chu Mu. He was very worried that when Chu Mu grew up, he would be a fatal threat to him. Therefore, no matter what, even if he didn't kill anyone else, he had to kill Chu Mu. To be continued. If you like this work, you are welcome to come to Chidian.com to vote for me. Your support is my biggest motivation. Chapter 101. What a fast speed, what a terrifying body technique. With 2 consecutive sighs, Wei Hong's eyes flashed with a strange light, but his face became more and more gloomy. He had lost the chase. Chu Mu had disappeared from under his nose, and he had gotten rid of him with that extremely fast and magical body technique. Whether it was not being at a disadvantage in the previous fight, or escaping from under his nose now, it made Wei Hong feel ashamed from the bottom of his heart. He was a swordsman at the peak of the 10th level. Even in the Lizhou Sword Academy, he was a well-known figure, but he could not do anything to a person who regarded him as an ant. This was simply a great shame. Chu Mu must die. The next time I meet him, I will directly use my killer move to kill him. Wei Hong thought to himself. His tone was full of murderous intent, and the air seemed to have become cold. However, his body technique is better than mine. Well, I will use my killer move to seriously injure him and force him to tell me his body technique before killing him. Although he had lost the chase, there was still quite a long time before the void realm of Qinglan closed. Wei Hong was not worried that Chu Mu could leave the void realm of Qinglan alive. A slight sound of the wind was heard, and a light green figure instantly passed by, flying over the grassland. It slowly reduced its speed and revealed its figure. It was Chu Mu. As soon as he stopped, Chu Mu immediately took out a porcelain bottle from his arms, opened it, and poured out 5 energy recovery pills. He threw them into his mouth and swallowed them. When they entered his stomach, they melted and turned into a medicinal power that began to replenish his sword aura. In the battle with Wei Hong, Chu Mu had consumed nearly half of his sword aura. After that, he fully displayed his body technique in the wind and did not care about the consumption of sword aura. Coupled with the will of the wind, he finally got rid of Wei Hong's pursuit. Now that his sword aura was almost exhausted, and he could not cultivate to restore it there, who knew if there would suddenly be a fierce beast or someone with bad intentions, so the energy recovery pills came in handy. Chu Mu had more than 50 chi recovery pills. After taking more than a dozen of them and circulating them around his body, he finally felt that his sword chi had completely recovered. Wei Hong's cultivation is much higher than mine. Right now, my main focus is to increase my cultivation. As long as I can raise my sword chi cultivation to the peak of stage 9, I have a 70% chance of killing Wei Hong. Chu Mu muttered to himself. Then, he carefully looked around to see if there were any spirit herbs that could increase the cultivation of his sword chi. Not long after, he finished his search. There were only ordinary grass and stones. Chu Mu's expression didn't change, and his aura was restrained. Then, he left with light footstep. I wonder if that disciple of the Qingfeng sword sect managed to escape? After they were safe, Yao Bifeng's expression changed. Her tone was still full of strong disbelief. She almost whispered, "But he can fight against Wei Hong, and he is not at a disadvantage. It's incredible. He is a real sword genius. I only hope that he can get rid of Wei Hong's pursuit. Once his cultivation is improved, he should be able to kill Wei Hong in turn." He thought about it. "I don't know how the other junior brothers and sisters are doing. I have to find them as soon as possible and gather them. I can't let the Qinglan sword sect's conspiracy succeed." "Wait." Wenren Yun, who was surrounded by 2 disciples of the Qinglan sword sect, had a slight change in her expression. She quickly shouted before the other side attacked, "I am only at the middle of stage 9 sword chi realm. My swordsmanship is very ordinary. I am not a threat to you at all. The one who is a real threat to you is Chu Mu. I can take you to find him and kill him." "Chu Mu!" Li Donglai's eyes flashed with a glint. The corner of his mouth curled up and flashed a playful smile. He looked at Wenren Yun with a mocking expression. "We will naturally find and kill him. As for you, you will also die. All the disciples of Green Edge Sword Faction and Green Water Sword Faction will die." Li Donglai was not afraid that Wenren Yun would know the truth, because Wenren Yun was only at the middle of stage 9, while he was at the peak of stage 9. He was also the eldest disciple of the Qinglan sword sect. Killing Wenren Yun was as easy as killing a mid-level ferocious beast. Wenren Yun's expression changed and his eyes became gloomy. He didn't expect that the Qinglan sword sect would want to kill all the elite disciples of the Qingfeng sword sect and the Qingshui sword sect who had reached the virtual realm. "No, you can't kill me. I am still valuable to you. Moreover, with your cultivation, it will be easy for you to kill me." Wenren Yun thought quickly and said, "This time, in our Qingfeng sword sect, other than Chu Mu, there is also Shao Qianfeng. He is not much weaker than Chu Mu and is more powerful than Li Yi and the other 2. Moreover, they have entered the Qingfeng sword cave to study the Qingfeng sword steel. Their strength must have increased. If I am with you when you meet them, we can say that we are temporarily working together to lower their guard. When the time comes, we can sneak attack them from behind. Not only can we prevent you from getting hurt, but we can also kill them more easily." In order to survive, in order to kill Chu Mu, Wenren Yun had already transformed into a lackey. This was because he knew that with his own strength, he simply couldn't do anything to Chu Mu. The only way was to ally with others. However, it was impossible for the Qingfeng sword sect to work together with him to deal with Chu Mu. Once the Qingfeng sword sect knew that he had this idea, he would be the first to die. After thinking about it, only the Qinglan sword sect could do it. However, he also knew that working with the Qinglan sword sect was like asking a tiger for its skin. If he was not careful, he would be the first to be killed. However, the desire to kill Chu Mu was too strong. It was so strong that he could not bear it and almost went crazy. Hearing this, Li Donglai was a little surprised at first. Then, a mysterious smile flashed across his face. Li Yi, Yuanhua, Wang Tingo, and Qingfeng sword steel, Li Donglai also knew about it. In fact, the 3 major sword sects of Qinglan Mountain were able to establish themselves in Qinglan Mountain because they each had their own heritage. Similar to the Qingfeng sword steel in Qingfeng Cave, Qinglan sword sect also had it. It was an open secret in Qinglan Mountain. "Very well, the information you have provided is very useful to me. In that case, I will spare your life for now." Li Donglai nodded with a smile and stared at Wenren Yun. His sharp eyes seemed to see through him. "However, don't play any tricks. You must cooperate with us sincerely. Otherwise, I will let you know how sharp my sword is." "Brother, don't worry. I, Wenren Yun, am a man of my word." Wenren Yun's heart was filled with hatred, but he did not show it. "We are not your brothers. Remember, we are the elite disciples of the Qinglan sword sect. You are just an elite disciple of the Qingfeng sword sect. You are not at the same level as us. On the other side, The elite disciple of the Qinlan sword sect had a sarcastic look on his face. He looked down on Wenren Yun. Moreover, people like you who betrayed your brothers and sisters and betrayed the sword sect. It is already a great gift for you to be with us. Wenren Yun's face was gloomy and his heart was filled with murderous intent. He was so angry that he almost spewed out. He could not wait to immediately draw his sword and kill the two in front of him. What? You are not convinced? Then draw your sword. The disciple of the Qinlan sword sect sneered disdainfully. He said, I promise, as soon as you draw your sword, I will kill you. Oh, you must be joking. Wenren Yun suppressed his anger and forced a smile. It was uglier than crying. Well, don't talk nonsense. Go find Chu Mu immediately. I can't wait. Li Donglai shouted impatiently. His eyes flashed with murderous intent. To be continued. If you like this work, you are welcome to come to Qidian. Come to vote for me. Your support is my biggest motivation. Chapter 102. Help! A shrill scream startled the surroundings. It pierced through the sky and fell into Chu Mu's ears. Roar! It was followed by a huge and brutal roar. The roar was like a muffled thunder. The scream stopped abruptly like a duck being strangled by the neck. It was silent. Only the intermittent roar and the slight sound of a drum could be heard. Chu Mu's eyes lit up sharply. He looked into the air and looked in the direction of the sound. In front of him was a sparse forest. It's a fierce beast, and it should be a powerful one. Chu Mu secretly rejoiced. In the Qinlan virtual realm, where there were powerful fierce beasts, there would generally be other treasures. At least, the gray rock wolf had verified this point. With a flash, Chu Mu activated his movement technique and quickly charged into the small forest. Transforming into a green shadow, he sprinted away. The small forest was not big. After a few dozen meters there was a mountain wall. Chu Mu also saw, about 5 meters high on the mountain wall, there was a dark hole. Roar! Another huge roar was heard. It was approaching quickly and the ground was shaking. Chu Mu quickly looked and saw a tall and strong figure not far away running wildly. This tall and sturdy figure was like a small hill that was moving quickly, causing the ground to shake continuously. It had gray skin and short gray hair. There were pieces of bulging muscles on its body, which were very obvious, like rock. There was a ferocious glint in his eyes. His sturdy arms were covered in blood, and the hair on his chest was also dripping with blood. A ferocious and murderous aura surged out like a tidal wave, accompanied by a foul stench. Chu Mu's face changed slightly. Vigorous stone ape, he whispered. The Herculean stone ape was a high-level vicious beast. Its strength was equivalent to a 10th phase early-stage swordsman. Its fur was tough, and its skin was tough and tough. Even the 100 refined sword could not harm it. Moreover, his strength was incomparably great. His arms had a terrifying strength of several thousand kilograms. Once caught by those thick and terrifying arms, one would be torn in half in an instant. Even an ordinary early 10th phase swordsman might not necessarily be its opponent. Chu Mu's heart was heavy. The fingers on his right hand moved gently, and his breathing became long and even. As the sword chi moved, his muscles relaxed slightly, and he pulled out his sword in a split second. Sword light was like a fleeting glimpse, sword chi attached to the blade, slashing out 2 rays of sword chi, tearing through the sky, killing towards the Herculean stone ape. Immediately after, Wind Travel used his body movement technique, drawing an arc, swinging his sword from the side. With a loud roar, the Herculean stone ape waved its thick right arm, as if it was waving away flies. With 2 popping sounds, the 2 rays of sword chi shattered and dissipated. On the Herculean stone ape's arm, only a few hairs were cut off, leaving a faint mark on its gray skin. Already expecting this, Chu Mu was not surprised at all. Like a gust of wind, he appeared on the left side of the Herculean stone ape. The fake clear wind sword condensed the early 9th phase sword chi, and like a crescent moon, it slashed out. The Herculean stone ape's skin was very tough, and its strength was incomparably powerful. However, its reaction speed was a little slow. Suddenly, Chu Mu's sword slashed on its left arm. With a ripping sound, blood spurted out. Roar! Roar! The Herculean stone ape's simple intelligence made it think that the weak thing in his hand would not be able to harm it. However, it did not expect that he was different from those weak things from before, and was able to injure it in an instant. The Herculean stone ape's eyes emitted a bloody light, and it was incomparably furious. Ignoring the wound on its left arm, its thick hands ferociously grabbed Chu Mu, intending to tear him apart. The thick arms brought up a strong airflow, and Chu Mu used the wind walk technique to dodge. Once again, he slashed out with his sword. With a ripping sound, the skin on the Herculean stone ape's chest was cut open, and blood spurted out. Such tough skin! Chu Mu was secretly shocked. With the sharpness of the fake clear wind sword and the sword chi, when he cut open the Herculean stone ape's skin, there was a kind of obscure feeling. One could imagine how bitter it would be for those swordsmen holding the 100 refinements sword when they encountered the Herculean stone ape. Being injured again did not make the Herculean stone ape retreat. Instead, it aroused its ferocious nature, and it became even more brutal. A thick fiendish aura rolled out from its body like a tide, and both of its arms continuously waved. Its power was huge, and when it hit the air, it let out a popping sound. One could imagine that once he was hit, under the power of a few thousand pounds, Chu Mu would definitely be heavily injured. The Herculean stone ape's arms waved and hammered, bringing up an extremely powerful storm. With a roar, Chu Mu's body swayed like a willow branch in the wind, and also like a small boat in the middle of a huge wave. Taking advantage of the gap, he struck out with his sword. The fake clear wind sword continuously cut open the Herculean stone ape's arms and chest, leaving behind one wound after another. With one strike, a cool breeze blew over, and 24 extremely sharp killing intent rushed over like a violent wave. Roar! Amidst the earth-shattering roar, the Herculean stone ape raised both of its arms up high, and the beast power in its entire body surged. With a buzzing sound, each strand of gray hair became as straight as steel needles. Vaguely, one could even see a formless power flowing on its skin, making the gray skin look like it was shining. Puff 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 sounds kept ringing out, and the 24 cold killing intent slashed onto the Herculean stone ape's body, but they were all shattered, and did not cause any damage to the Herculean stone ape. Beast power protection! Chu Mu exclaimed in a low voice. Like a ninth-phase swordsman, high-level beasts also had the ability to activate their beast power to the surface of their body, forming a protective layer. Furthermore, the beast power of a beast was even more violent than a swordsman's sword chi. After the Herculean stone ape activated its beast power, it did not retract it, but instead channeled the beast power to its arms. Chu Mu's sharp eyes could clearly see that the beast power on the Herculean stone ape's body was flowing towards its arms. Without any reason, Chu Mu's heart skipped a beat, and a sense of danger emerged, and he hurriedly retreated. Faster than words could tell, the Herculean stone ape once again roared, and its thick, hammer-like fists clasped together, and fiercely smashed towards the ground. The wind whistled, and with a loud bang, the ground shook. The incomparably violent beast power instantly blasted into the ground, and in an instant, the ground within a radius of 10 meters seemed to be boiling, violently shaking, and completely shattering, turning into pieces of hard rock the size of a human head. Sandwiched under the violent beast power, it was like a cannonball being shot out. Boom boom boom. It's a beast technique. Chu Mu was shocked, but the range was large and the speed was fast. He could only retreat about 5 meters, and it was impossible for him to retreat more than 10 meters. Moving, sword chi formed an armor that covered his entire body. In an instant, Chu Mu could only feel pieces of hard rock heavily bombarding his sword chi armor, and the huge impact caused his body to uncontrollably fly upwards. clear cracking sounds rang out, like glass shattering next to his ears. The sword chi armor shattered under the powerful impact, and the hard rock was also shattered. However, there was still a portion that bombarded Chu Mu's invisible protective sword chi, causing it to vibrate, stop, and dissipate. Chu Mu flew more than 10 meters in an instant, the blood chi in his entire body shaking. Waves of pain came from where he was bombarded, as if his bones were broken. Raising his chi to lighten his body, he barely managed to use windwalk and quickly flew backwards, pulling away from the Herculean stone ape. After the beast technique, the ground within 10 meters was shattered into countless pieces. It was a scene of devastation, and it was a shocking sight. The Herculean stone ape faced the sky and stood upright. As its thick and solid arms waved, its huge fists heavily smashed onto its own hard and strong chest, producing a dong-dong-dong-dong sound similar to that of a drum. It opened its mouth and let out a woo-woo-woo roar. Its simple intelligence made it feel that this weak little thing couldn't possibly survive after receiving its beast technique. Therefore, it won. It won. It won. It should cheer, and it shouldn't even care about the wound. Chu Mu landed more than 20 meters away, his blood chi still shaking. His entire body felt uncomfortable, but he resisted this uncomfortable feeling and hurriedly used his movement technique to quickly retreat, pulling away another 10 meters. His face was a bit pale. The Herculean stone ape's beast technique was too powerful. If it was another 9th phase sword practitioner, even if they didn't die, they would definitely be seriously injured with just the protection of the sword chi armor. Luckily, other than the sword chi armor, Chu Mu also had 2 layers of sword chi armor to protect himself. The combination of the two prevented him from being injured, but the blood chi in his entire body shook, making him very uncomfortable. Taking advantage of the time to adjust his breathing, his blood chi eased and calmed down. The place where he was hit also didn't hurt as much. Chu Mu let out a sigh of relief. His eyelids trembled, and his pupils emitted a sharp light like a sword. The sword chi in a 6-meter radius was immediately mobilized and gathered. Like a gust of wind, it made a whistling sound, making Chu Mu feel as if he was going to ride the wind. The Herculean stone ape also noticed Chu Mu's movements. It stopped beating its chest in celebration and looked over. Seeing that this weak little thing wasn't dead or seriously injured, and seemed to be completely unharmed, it immediately became furious. With a loud roar, the Herculean stone ape's thick arms supported itself on the ground and quickly rushed forward. It was like an armored vehicle rumbling as it rushed towards Chu Mu, causing the ground to shake. Chu Mu's eyes became increasingly sharp. Under his control, the sword chi in a 6-meter radius quickly condensed and followed Chu Mu's left hand that was on the sword, slowly sweeping past. The Herculean stone ape was 50 meters away from Chu Mu. It would take about 3 to 4 seconds for it to rush over. 2 seconds later, Chu Mu's right hand held the fake clear wind sword and slowly waved it. On the entire blade, there was a faint azure color that flowed slowly like water. It was also like a faint azure flame that burned, making it exceptionally gorgeous. Dong-dong-dong sounds continuously rang out and the ground shook. The Herculean stone ape's figure quickly enlarged in front of his eyes. A violent aura surged forth like a wave, causing Chu Mu's black hair to fly. Moreover, there was also a stench that caused Chu Mu to almost suffocate. Closely staring at the Herculean stone ape, Xiao Chen saw each of its movements clearly. Shortly after, a faint azure color flashed in his eyes. It was extremely sharp, as if it could pierce through the void. With a low shout, Chu Mu rushed forward and rushed towards the Herculean stone ape. A streak of sword light slashed out like a meteor. The two figures crossed each other in an instant, each of them rushing a few meters away. The faint azure flame on the fake clear wind sword flickered like a candle that had been blown by a strong wind and was instantly extinguished. The Herculean stone ape's arm supported itself on the ground and suddenly let out a mournful whimper. With a chi-la sound, A huge wound appeared on its abdomen, as if it was about to be cut in half. Blood spurted out like a fountain, mixing with its internal organs and intestines. The ground in front of it was instantly dyed red. The Herculean stone ape's large and robust body slowly fell forward, its entire body constantly twitching. Even though a high-level vicious beast's vitality was strong, this kind of wound was too fatal. Moreover, Chu Mu's sword chi had entered the Herculean stone ape's body and destroyed its weak internal organs. To be continued. If you like this work, you are welcome to come to Chidian.com to vote for me. Your support is my greatest motivation. Chapter 103. Phew, Chu Mu let out a sigh of relief. He turned around and looked at the still twitching corpse of the vigorous stone ape, his face somewhat pale. Using all of the external sword chi to forcefully merge with the internal sword chi and condense it on the fake clear wind sword required Tang Fan's full concentration. Moreover, he had to clearly see every movement of the vigorous stone ape. He couldn't let go of even the slightest detail. Then, he slashed with his sword and controlled the sword chi to enter the vigorous stone ape's body. All of this was done in an instant. The mental burden brought by all of this was very heavy, making him feel quite tired. If it wasn't for the fact that his soul had merged with the vigorous stone ape, Chu Mu would probably be drowsy right now. If the vigorous stone ape's skin is peeled off, it can be made into leather armor and so on. However, cutting it off is a complicated job, and I'm not good at it. Chu Mu stared at the vigorous stone ape's corpse and thought to himself, moreover, its skin has been cut by my fake clear wind sword. Forget it. Soon after, Chu Mu's eyes lit up as he looked at the black hole in the mountain wall not far away. The vigorous stone ape's habit was to live in caves in the mountain wall. Therefore, it could be concluded that the black hole was the cave where the vigorous stone ape lived. As a high-level vicious beast that was comparable to an early 10th phase swordsman, perhaps there would be some good things in the vigorous stone ape's cave. Thinking up to this point, Chu Mu hurriedly took out a few chi recovery pills and threw them into his mouth. He stood motionless and split his attention between paying attention to his surroundings and circulating his sword aura to increase the effectiveness of the chi recovery pills, trying his best to recover his sword aura. A moment later, Chu Mu's inner sword aura recovered by a large portion, and his protective sword aura naturally recovered as well. Immediately, he used a movement technique and quickly leapt towards the mountain wall. Lightly touching the ground, his entire body lightly floated upwards until he reached the cave entrance. With a flash, Chu Mu entered the cave entrance like a gust of wind. A foul stench assaulted Chu Mu's nostrils, causing him to almost vomit. He hurriedly held his breath. The breath-holding technique was not a secret technique. When he was on Earth, Chu Mu had deliberately practiced it in order to practice his swordsmanship underwater. Therefore, he could hold his breath for more than 10 minutes without breathing. He quickly entered the cave. The lighting was a little dim, but it didn't hinder Chu Mu's vision. His eyes were shining like a cat's. The Herculean stone ape's cave was about 10 meters deep, and the innermost part was relatively spacious. Chu Mu quickly swept his gaze over and saw two piles of things, one big and one small, on each side. He quickly approached and carefully looked at the big pile of things. As a result, his face changed greatly. His stomach surged with stormy waves, and he almost couldn't help but vomit. He hurriedly turned away. It turned out that it was the feces of the Herculean stone ape. No wonder this thing was so unhygienic. It actually pooped in the cave. After a long time, his body would definitely be contaminated with this stench. Fortunately, he had practiced the breath-holding technique before, and it had already integrated into his soul. Even if he changed his body, there wouldn't be any problems using it now. Otherwise, he really wasn't sure if he could continue to stay here, let alone look for any treasures. After thinking quickly, Chu Mu strode towards the small pile on the other side. This time, Chu Mu learned his lesson. When he was 2 meters away, He stopped and looked carefully. Only then did he relax a little. It wasn't the feces of the Herculean stone ape, but a pile of miscellaneous things. Chumu approached in a flash and bent down to look carefully. There were a few hundred tempered swords that looked very old, as if they had been there for a long time. There were also a few incense boxes, but because of the time they were damaged. There were also some broken porcelain fragments inside. Chumu flipped through and found 3 egg-sized stones. They looked very ordinary, but when Chumu pinched these seemingly ordinary stones, he keenly felt that there were traces of pure aura fluctuations within them. What is this? Chumu was secretly surprised. He pinched one of the stones in front of his eyes and carefully looked at it. The stone was gray. When he looked carefully, he could see a bit of mottled white on it, but it wasn't obvious. Chumu pinched the other 2 stones one by one and carefully felt them. He found that there were faint and pure aura fluctuations on them, just like the pure aura fluctuations he felt in the Qingfeng cave. Could it be that this kind of fluctuation is the fluctuation of aura? Then this kind of stone contains aura? All sorts of questions flashed in Chumu's mind. He couldn't help but have a thought. Let me try and see if I can absorb the aura within this stone into my body, if it really is aura. Immediately after, he held the stone in his hand and concentrated his thoughts. He used the Zhongyuan sword qi to move the sword qi. As he circulated it, it spread to his palm. When he touched the stone in his hand, the feeling of pure aura fluctuations became more and more obvious. With a shift of his thoughts, a strand of pure aura, under the guidance of the inner sword qi, seeped into his palm and quickly spread along his arm. In the process, it rapidly transformed into inner sword qi. Just by absorbing a strand of pure aura, after moving it and transforming it into inner sword qi, Chumu felt that his own inner sword qi had clearly improved. Chumu was shocked. His eyes widened and his face was full of shock. He stared at the stone in his palm and was speechless. The effect was so strong. Just by trying to guide a strand of aura into his body and transforming it into inner sword qi, it actually improved his inner sword qi significantly. This feeling was as if he had been cultivating for more than 10 days. What the hell is this thing? The effect is so strong. It's really shocking. Chumu muttered to himself. His heart had not calmed down. I'm sure that if I cultivate with this stone, it won't take long for me to be promoted to the peak of level 9. By then, my strength will increase greatly. Suppressing the excitement in his heart, Chumu kept the 3 stones in his arms. Although he did not know the name of this stone, it was definitely something good. It was a treasure. Chumu made up his mind. After leaving the Qinglan virtual realm, he had to find some relevant books to understand. Otherwise, his knowledge of this world was still too little. Knowledge was power. In any world, this was the same. If one did not have enough knowledge, they would not recognize the good things. Sometimes, they would mistakenly throw away the treasures as trash. This was because some things looked very ordinary. Just like these 3 stones, they were very ordinary. If Chumu had not touched them personally, and his senses were much sharper than the average swordsman, he would have found a weak and pure aura fluctuation in them. If it were other swordsmen, they might not even touch them and directly ignore them. He continued to search. The harvest of 3 extraordinary stones made Chumu full of motivation. After a while, the pile of things was turned upside down by Chumu. Chumu found a ragged cloth bag. When he touched it with his fingers, the ragged cloth cracked. In the ragged cloth bag, there was a silk book covered with dust. Chumu picked it up and blew the dust off it. This was a silk book with a pale golden cover. It was not thick. Chumu carefully stared at the words on the silk book. There was a kind of restrained sharpness. Golden Edge Swordsmanship. Reading out each word, Chumu was delighted again. Obviously, this was a swordsmanship. However, he did not know what level of swordsmanship it was. Suppressing the excitement and hope in his heart, Chumu quickly flipped open the cover and read carefully. As he read, he could not hide the surprise on his face. Advanced swordsmanship. Chu Mu's pupils trembled. He was very excited. Currently, he needed an advanced swordsmanship very much. The ideal choice was naturally the advanced swordsmanship of the wind element. Next was the advanced swordsmanship of the cloud element. The last choice was the advanced swordsmanship of the metal element. This golden edge swordsmanship was an advanced swordsmanship of the metal element. I have the aspect of wind for the wind element, but not for the cloud element. However, the essence of metal is the lowest. If I can cultivate an advanced swordsmanship of the metal element, I might be able to use it to improve my understanding of the essence of metal. Chu Mu was secretly delighted. After cultivating an advanced swordsmanship of the metal element, his strength would be greatly improved. An advanced swordsmanship and 3 stones that contain pure spiritual energy. In this way, my strength will be significantly improved in a short period of time. When I meet Wei Hong again, I will definitely kill him with my sword. By the way, I recommend this book. Take the Red Alert base to Hainan Island in 1939 and build a base to fight the Japanese. Avenge the national humiliation. Red Alert of the anti-Japanese war. If you like this work, you are welcome to come to Chidian. Come to vote for me. Your support is my biggest motivation. Chapter 104. What a pity. This Li Yi is too cunning. He managed to escape. The disciple of Qinglan's sword sect sighed. He was unwilling to give up. Don't worry. He was injured by my sword. He won't be able to recover in a short time. When we are about to leave Qinglan virtual realm, Li Yi will definitely appear as long as we block the exit. That will be the time of his death. Li Donglai smiled coldly and said confidently. Wenren Yun, on the other hand, had a troubled look on his face. Not long ago, they met Li Yi and pretended to join forces with him. Because of Wenren Yun's presence, Li Yi did not suspect anything even though he was suspicious. In the end, he was ambushed. Fortunately, he reacted quickly and hurriedly escaped. Otherwise, he would have been killed. However, if Li Yi did not die, Wenren Yun would be exposed sooner or later. At that time, he would be charged with the crime of colluding with a rival sect to harm his fellow disciples. He would be punished with 10 swords piercing his body. Li Donglai and the disciple of Qinglan's sword sect looked at Wenren Yun with disdain. 2. Senior brothers. Look, I don't have any way out now. Wenren Yun suddenly raised his head and looked at Li Donglai and the disciple with a pleading look. Can I join Qinglan's sword sect? Oh, you want to join Qinglan's sword sect? No problem, I can make the decision. However, from now on, you have to betray Qingfeng's sword sect. Li Donglai said with an unfathomable smile. He seemed to be scheming something. I have already betrayed Qingfeng's sword sect. Wenren Yun's face was bitter. There was an indescribable feeling in his heart. Thinking back, he had been a disciple of Qingfeng's sword sect for many years. He had a deep relationship with Qingfeng's sword sect. But now, he had to betray Qingfeng's sword sect. The feeling was very uncomfortable. It was as if he had to give up something important and cut a piece of flesh from his heart. However, he had no choice but to do so. His actions were akin to colluding with the disciples of other sword sects to harm his fellow disciples. It was basically equivalent to betraying the sword sect. Unless he wanted to die, betraying the Qingfeng sword sect was his only choice. After betraying the Qingfeng sword sect, if he did not have a powerful backer, he would also be hunted down by the Qingfeng sword sect. Wenren Yun didn't want to die. Although she regretted it very much, since she had already done it, there was no turning back. Chu Mu, it's all your fault. Wenren Yun roared in his heart, blaming everything on Chu Mu. If it were not for Chu Mu, he would not have done something so impulsive, killing his fellow disciples and betraying Azure-Tip sword sect. Well, after leaving the empty realm of Qinglan, I will apply to the sword faction. By then, you can become an elite disciple of the sword faction. Li Donglai smiled. He was the big brother of the Qinlan sword sect, and his words carried a lot of weight. But when the time comes, you'll have to announce to the people of the Qingfeng sword sect that you're leaving the sect and joining us. Wenren Yun's face instantly darkened. Wasn't this forcing him to completely sever ties with the Qingfeng sword sect? This was no different from stabbing a sword into the heart of the Green Edge sword sect. What? You don't want to? Do you think we're a small sect like the Qingfeng sword sect that you can join just because you want to? The big brother has already agreed to let you join us. It's already a great favor for you. The late ninth stage disciple pointed at Wenren Yun's nose arrogantly and said coldly, I will do it. Wenren Yun lowered his head and said in a low voice, That's right. The late ninth stage disciple smiled proudly. Wenren Yun's heart was filled with killing intent. If he had the chance, he would definitely kill these two people. Not only did they humiliate him repeatedly, but they also did not give him a share of the elixirs and sword chi arts that he had obtained before. They all fell into Li Donglai's hands. But now, he did not have enough strength, and there was no suitable opportunity. He could only hide this killing intent in his heart, not daring to show it. Well, don't waste time. Look for other treasures, Li Donglai said impatiently. His palm gently touched his chest, where there was a yellow level sword chi art that he had found not long ago. He just had to wait until the end of the trip to the empty realm of Qinlan and return to the sword sect. At that time, his strength would certainly increase a little. Maybe he could use the opportunity to break through to the 10th stage of the sword chi realm. As they walked, suddenly, the late ninth stage disciple's face changed and he whispered. Not far in front of them, there were two badly mutilated corpses, as if they had been severely hammered by a huge hammer. It was too horrible to look at. Because it was completely blurred, even the logo on the clothes could not be seen. Therefore, the three of them looked at it and did not know which sword sect the disciples belonged to. They should have died at the hands of high-level fierce beasts. Li Donglai looked and said. He looked at the footprints around and then looked at the mountain wall not far away. Then, his eyes lit up and he said, Follow me. After saying that, Li Donglai used his body movement and quickly flew to the mountain wall. The late ninth stage disciple and Wenren Yun hurried to follow. They did not see anything. It should be a high-level fierce beast, the vigorous stone ape. Then, it is likely that there is some treasure in its cave. Li Donglai was secretly happy. After a while, a dark cave entrance appeared in front of Li Donglai and the others. There is indeed. Li Donglai was a little excited, but he did not directly rush into the cave. He thought that the vigorous stone ape was in the cave. Therefore, he shot a sword chi into the cave from a distance, intending to lure the vigorous stone ape out. They came from another direction, so they did not see the body of the vigorous stone ape. The sword chi broke through the air and shot into the cave, hitting the cave wall and making a strong impact sound, which alarmed Chu Mu in the cave. Someone is coming. Chu Mu was alert and quickly put the golden-edge sword technique into his arms. He moved his feet and quickly went out of the cave. He did not rush out of the cave at once, but stopped at the entrance of the cave and looked outside. He saw three figures, disciples of the Qinlan sword sect. Wenren Yun. Why are they together? Chu Mu's eyes narrowed and said, No matter, Wenren Yun has always been hostile to me and even has the intention to kill me. So, I will take this opportunity to end him. As for the two disciples of the Qinlan sword sect, humph, they must die. Thinking of this, Chu Mu did not hide anymore. In a flash, he directly flew out like an arrow. With a clang, he drew his sword in the air and slashed out. The sword chi from the outside and the sword chi from the inside mixed together, forming three extremely powerful sword chi. They tore through the air and made an extremely sharp sound as they slashed out, leaving behind three clear marks. Insignificant skill. Li Donglai's face changed. He coldly snorted, drew his sword and waved it. The sword chi was released and collided with Chu Mu's sword chi. The ninth phase late-stage swordsman and Wenren Yun's face changed and hurriedly dodged. The sword chi collided with each other, making a terrible explosion sound. The air was shaking and countless broken sword chi shot out in all directions. The other two sword chi bombarded the ground and suddenly broke it open. Countless soil and gravel splashed in all directions. He is Chu Mu, kill him. Wenren Yun was like a cat whose tail was stepped on. His face changed and he fiercely jumped up and screamed. He drew his sword and slashed out two sword chi. Chu Mu, you came at the right time. Li Donglai and the ninth phase late-stage swordsman were happy and immediately counterattacked. Looking down from above, Shao Chen flew through the air. The fake clear wind sword continuously slashed out. Streams of sword chi mixed inside and outside flew down like splashes of ink. It was like a heavy downpour, causing people's scalps to go numb and their expressions to change greatly. Kill him! Wenren Yun screamed like a ghost. His heart was filled with fear. Chu Mu's sword light turned and he took a breath in midair. His wind travel movement technique was fully used, and he dodged the counterattacking sword aura. A sword light that was like an aurora from outer space shot towards Wenren Yun. Wenren Yun only felt a strong killing intent lock onto him. His whole body suddenly became cold and his scalp numb. He quickly retreated and his heart was filled with fear. Li Donglai and the ninth phase late-stage swordsmen quickly waved their swords. The sword chi roared and rushed towards Chu Mu. At the same time, their bodies stretched out and flew up like eagles, trying to intercept Chu Mu in the air. The surging chi was clearly felt by Chu Mu. He saw Chu Mu's body in the air, making an incredible turn in an arc. He directly avoided Li Donglai and the ninth phase late-stage swordsman and continued to attack Wenren Yun. Wenren Yun's heart was filled with panic. He continuously retreated and displayed his agility skill in an attempt to avoid Chu Mu. At the same time, he screamed, "Two senior brothers! Quickly stop him and kill him!" Li Donglai's heart was trembling. At the same time, his sword light flashed behind him and chopped onto the ninth phase late-stage disciple's sword. Clang! 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 Li Donglai borrowed the force of the collision and quickly flew towards Chu Mu like a big bird. His sword pierced through the air. The sword light flashed and the sword shadow was cold, as if it wanted to pierce through the void. The wind was whistling and the air was shaking. The roar was fierce and earth-shattering. Li Donglai's sword chi was extremely sharp. Even if it was a hard rock, it would be shattered under this sword. Chu Mu only felt a sharp force coming from behind him. It was as if it wanted to pierce through his body. He couldn't help but speed up and dive down. His sword chi was mixed with the power of wind and thunder. It was aimed at Wenren Yun. In terms of cultivation base, Chu Mu was at the early 9th phase while Wenren Yun was at the mid-9th phase. But when Chu Mu was at the peak of the 8th phase, he could easily defeat Wenren Yun. And now, Chu Mu's cultivation base had greatly increased. His strength was even greater than Wenren Yun's. Go die. Wenren Yun's entire body was locked down. He could feel Chu Mu's killing intent enveloping him. His hair stood on end. He wasn't willing to be killed like this. His expression changed, and he became incomparably fierce. Sword chi surged out of his body as he used his most powerful killing move. Sword light pierced through the air. It was as if it was the sharpest thing in the world, capable of breaking through all obstacles. It was shocking. The one who's going to die is you. Chu Mu let out a low shout. His eyes became incomparably sharp, and a faint golden light flashed through them. In an instant, his sword stabbed out. With a twist of his wrist, the two swords collided. Using a shockwave technique, he directly pulled Wenren Yun's killing move to the side. A terrifying explosion rang out. Wenren Yun's expression changed. He had used his full strength in that attack without holding anything back. Once it hit, he was sure that no matter how strong Chu Mu was, he would definitely be seriously injured. At that time, he would be able to retreat and allow Li Donglai and Li Wuyo to catch up and kill Chu Mu. But now that his sword had missed, he was powerless to pull it back. He could only watch as Chu Mu's sword rapidly grew larger and larger in front of him. A sharp aura enveloped him, and killing intent invaded his body. His back shivered. No! Wenren Yun only had time to let out a miserable cry. Chu Mu's sword had already pierced through the air and pierced through Wenren Yun's throat. In the blink of an eye, a bloody hole appeared in Wenren Yun's throat. Blood spurted out. His eyes were wide open and filled with confusion. He slowly fell backwards. He only felt that the sky in front of him was turning upside down. It was getting more and more blurry. Finally, he fell into darkness. For a moment, Wenren Yun felt a kind of relief in his heart, as if a heavy burden had been lifted off his shoulders. "It's your turn." Chu Mu quickly turned around and slashed out a few sword chi. Using the wind travel technique, it was like a gust of wind blowing towards the 9th phase late stage disciple of Qinglan's sword sect. The 9th phase late stage disciple's expression changed. Although he looked down on Wenren Yun, it was undeniable that Wenren Yun was also a 9th phase middle stage swordsman. Unexpectedly, he was killed in an instant. It was enough to show how powerful Chu Mu was. Go to hell. The 9th phase late stage disciple's face suddenly changed as he roared. He raised his sword high up and heavily chopped down. In a split second, a thick light blue arc of sword chi shot out from the parting sword, as if it was tearing through the void. This was a wind attribute middle-level sword technique killing move. Showing off in front of an expert. Chu Mu secretly laughed. A person who had not comprehended the wind element mentality had actually used a wind element sword attack in front of him, who had comprehended 30% of the wind element mentality. Wasn't this showing off in front of an expert? Without dodging, Chu Mu still rushed forward. Under the 30% wind element mentality, he casually waved his sword. A strange scene appeared. The wind element middle stage killer move was actually defeated. It was like smoke being blown away by a strong wind. Li Donglai, who was attacking with his sword, was stunned. The 9th phase late stage disciple's face was full of disbelief. The scene in front of him was like an illusion. At this moment, Chu Mu had already blown over like a gust of wind. His sword had arrived. Besides some hidden cards, Chu Mu did not hold back at all. He was trying to kill his opponent in the shortest time to avoid any unexpected changes. Killing intent erupted. Killing intent swept out like a tide. The sword chi was biting cold and threatening. The sword light was blinding and dazzling. The opponent was almost scared out of his wits. He found that he could not dodge or resist. "Senior apprentice brother, save me." The 9th phase late stage disciple cried out in panic. He waved his sword again and again, trying to block Chu Mu's attack. However, Chu Mu's sword vision was at the large success stage, and he easily caught the gap. He casually stabbed out with his sword, and like a cool breeze, it penetrated every opening. The 9th phase late stage disciple's hair stood on end, and he only felt a sliver of danger invade him, but he didn't know where it came from. Suddenly, a dazzling light bloomed in front of his eyes. It made his eyes hurt and he unconsciously closed them. "Stop!" Li Donglai's face changed. His eyes were filled with a threatening light. His sword stabbed out like thunder, making a muffled rumbling sound. Chu Mu did not care. His sword was like a gentle breeze. It was invisible and traceless, and it instantly cut through. The 9th phase late stage disciple felt a sharp pain in his neck, as if something important had been ejected from his body. His body gradually weakened. After killing this 9th phase late stage disciple with one slash, Chu Mu lightly tapped the ground with the tip of his foot. His entire body leapt into the air, drawing an arc in the air as he turned around. His posture was graceful, and he once again slashed out with his sword in the air, creating a mixture of internal and external sword auras. "You deserve to die." Li Donglai's face was ferocious. He was filled with killing intent towards Chu Mu. Muffled rumbling sounds constantly sounded out. Li Donglai slashed out again and again. The sword chi was like electric arcs that flashed in the air. The air was filled with a strange numbing sensation. Sword after sword was incomparably fast. Lightning flashed, and it was like a bolt of lightning that tore through the sky. It was filled with a terrifying power. What a strong momentum! Chu Mu was slightly surprised. This momentum was strong and fierce, and it was even stronger than Li Yi's. The sword chi was completely defeated. Li Donglai's sword was like a bolt of lightning that tore through the sky. It was extremely powerful and destructive. He intended to kill Chu Mu with one sword. Chu Mu's sword was like a gentle breeze. It was silent, invisible, and pervasive. Unknowingly, it had weakened Li Donglai's thunder-killing intent. The two swords collided, and the sound of metal clanging continued to ring out. The sword chi splashed and the two figures flashed. In the blink of an eye, the two sides had fought dozens of times. The more Li Donglai fought, the more shocked he was. He was at the peak of 9th stage, and had touched the barrier of 10th stage. In terms of swordsmanship, if he claimed to be the second disciple of the Qinglan sword sect, no one would dare to claim to be the first. Even some of the elders felt inferior. But now, dozens of swords with all his strength could not do anything to his opponent. He could not even gain the upper hand, and there were many gaps in his sword. Involuntarily, the killing intent in his heart was even stronger. This was not only because of the hatred and killing intent of Chu Mu for killing the disciples of the Qinglan sword sect, nor was it because of the task given by Elder Yao Ri. This was a real killing intent that came from the heart. No matter what, such a person could not be allowed to grow. After reaching that line of thought, Li Donglai's sword grew even fiercer, faster and more ferocious. The lightning-type sword energy from every part of his body surged out without holding anything back. Crackling sounds kept ringing out from the air as countless lightning arcs leapt about. His black hair fluttered, one by one straight to the sky, as sharp as a sword. His momentum was extremely amazing. There seemed to be electric arcs flashing in his eyes. Kill, kill, kill! There was a burst of shouting, full of horror and killing intent. Sword after sword gradually became fierce, and Chu Mu was cut in half. Chu Mu looked indifferent and calmly waved his sword. Sword after sword, it was like a gentle breeze, like a heavenly steed, like an antelope hanging its horn, untraceable, as if it was made by nature. No matter how fierce and fast Li Donglai's sword was, he was still able to block it one by one, making the other party return empty-handed. In the fight, Chu Mu finally saw that Li Donglai's swordsmanship was comparable to Shao Qianfeng's. He had already entered the standard of a swordsmanship master. Since he already knew the other party's swordsmanship and understood the highest level of swordsmanship of the elite disciples of the Qinglan sword sect, Chu Mu immediately launched a counterattack. This kind of close combat based on basic swordsmanship was Chu Mu's strength. With a stab, Li Donglai only felt that his sword seemed to be bound by some invisible force, as if it was uncontrollable. It was involuntarily pulled to the left. Only in this way could he block the other party's seemingly ordinary sword and not be hurt. Shwa shwa shwa, sword light flashed as Chu Mu linked sword after sword. Sword after sword, there was nothing special about it. However, what was strange was that Li Donglai's sword was often out of control, as if it was being pushed by an invisible force that forced him to do so in order to block Chu Mu's sword, or else he would be stabbed. His rhythm was disrupted and he was completely under Chu Mu's control. Li Donglai's face became incomparably unsightly. His face was the color of a pig's liver. His eyes were glaring angrily. Amidst his panic, his eyes were burning with anger. However, Li Donglai felt extremely sullen. His chest felt stifled, and he almost spat out a mouthful of blood. He let out a loud roar, and his voice was like rolling thunder. With his full strength, He blocked Chu Mu's sword and flew backwards. Whoosh! Like a bolt of lightning, he retreated 10 meters. He only felt the blood and qi in his body churning. Because of the forceful reversal of the sword qi, his meridians were stinging with pain. For a moment, the sword qi was scattered and difficult to move. Chu Mu neutralized the other party's counterforce and used all his strength in the wind travel. With a stab, 24 extremely sharp killing intent enveloped Li Donglai's body. Not good. Li Donglai's face changed and he felt cold all over. He had no choice but to forcefully move the scattered sword qi to form a protective armor. Qi, qi, qi. The 24 killing intent were all shattered. Li Donglai staggered back several steps, leaving behind clear footprints. With a groan, the blood and qi in his body churned. His meridians were stinging with pain, and a trace of blood seeped out of the corner of his mouth. Because forcefully moving the scattered sword qi was too hasty, it caused him to be injured. How could Chu Mu miss such an opportunity? Green Wolf double kill. Green Wolf howls at the moon. Shocking cloud kill. Clear wind kill. Under the power of 4 mid-level killing moves, Li Donglai had no choice but to forcefully move the sword qi to use a killing move to resist. But in the end, he was injured internally and his strength was not enough. The last killing move cut through and his body was cut in half at the waist. His eyes were wide and blank, full of unwillingness. The 100 refinement sword that fell to the side was full of gaps and broken into 2. Qinglan's sword sect's senior brother Li Donglai died. To be continued. If you like this work, you are welcome to come to Chidian.com to vote for me. Your support is my greatest motivation. Chapter 105. The smell of blood filled the air. 3 bodies fell in 3 different places, 2 with bloody holes in their throats, and 1 was cut in half at the waist. Chu Mu first walked towards Li Donglai's corpse and searched through his clothes. He pulled out a few items and walked towards the 9th phase late-stage disciple. He did the same thing and pulled out a few items before finally walking towards Wenren Yun. You colluded with the Qinglan sword sect. You deserve to die. Unfortunately, Wenren Yun only had some qi-recovering pills and hemostasis pills, which was extremely poor. Up to now, 4 disciples of the Qinglan sword sect have died under my sword, and one of them was a big brother. I wonder what the elders of the Qinglan sword sect will think when they know about it. Chu Mu secretly thought, and he felt very comfortable thinking about that situation. The people of the Qinglan sword sect had made a big conspiracy, and Chu Mu was completely angry when he learned about it. He vowed to kill all the disciples of the Qinglan sword sect, and this was just the beginning. Let's see if there is anything good in these 2 disciples of the Qinglan sword sect. Immediately, he took out the things from Li Donglai and the late 9th stage disciple and carefully checked them. After a while, Chu Mu finished checking, and his face was full of surprise and surprise. This time, the harvest was really not small. Among them, there were more than 20 low-grade spiritual medicine, which could be used to refine qi training pills. A small part of it was the main material of the qi-breaking pills, and there was even a mid-grade spiritual medicine, the primordial grass. The primordial grass could be taken alone, or it could be refined into a pill. Of course, the effect of refining into a pill would definitely be better. Among all the spiritual medicine, the primordial grass is suitable for me to take. Maybe it can directly improve my cultivation to the middle or even the late 9th stage. But now I have 3 stones full of pure spiritual qi, which can be absorbed to accelerate the improvement of my cultivation. In this case, I will find a relatively stable place to absorb the pure spiritual qi in the stones and transform it into sword qi, and improve my cultivation to the peak of the 9th stage as soon as possible. As for the nurturing yuan grass, I'll keep it for now. When I refine it into a medicinal pill, the effect will be twice as good. When Chu Mu flipped to the last item, he was puzzled at first, but when he flipped it open and saw the contents, he became excited. He held a silk booklet in his hands, trembling slightly. His pupils were also trembling, revealing the unconcealable joy in his heart. A top-grade Huang class sword chi art. That's great. It's even better than my middle-grade Huang class Zhongyuan sword chi art. Chu Mu was secretly excited. His eyes shone brightly. Furthermore, this sword chi technique is the same as the Zhongyuan sword chi technique. It's called the Shangyuan sword chi technique. It's almost as if it was specially prepared for me. Once I leave the Void Realm and return to the Qingfeng sword sect, I will begin my closed-door training and switch to the upper origin sword chi technique. At that time, my sword chi will become even denser and purer, and my strength will also increase significantly. Chu Mu really wanted to switch to the upper origin sword chi technique right now. Unfortunately, it would take at least 3 to 4 days. In a place like this, it was extremely inconvenient. He could only suppress this thought for now. He hurriedly tidied up everything. The upper origin sword chi technique and the golden edge sword technique were placed in his bosom. The other items were placed in a bag and packed on his back. Looking around, he used his movement technique and quickly made his way towards the mountain wall. Following the mountain wall, Chu Mu soon found a natural depression. It was about 2 meters deep, and there were rocks and rocks all around. It was quite hidden and difficult to find. Chu Mu patrolled the area again. Not finding any signs of ferocious beast activity, he pushed some large rocks to form an encirclement, forming a better defense. Hiding in the cave in the mountain wall, the outside was blocked by rock. After Chu Mu slightly relaxed, he took out a rock that contained pure spirit energy and held it in his palm. He closed his eyes and removed all distracting thoughts. He entered a state of cultivation and began channeling the Zhongyuan sword aura art. As the Zhongyuan sword qi enveloped the stone in his palm, wisps of pure spiritual qi seeped out from within the stone, burrowing into his palm and spreading along his arm. Following the circulation of the sword qi, they were slowly converted into Zhongyuan sword qi. As for Chu Mu's own middle origin sword aura, it slowly became even purer under the influence of the pure spirit aura. Chu Mu still lacked a lot of knowledge about the ancient sword continent. Otherwise, if he knew a lot, he wouldn't have tried to absorb the spirit aura in these rocks, and the current scene wouldn't have happened. This rock was called a spirit stone. As the name implied, it contained pure spiritual energy. But to a swordsman in the sword chi realm, spirit stones were completely useless. This was because when a swordsman was in the sword chi realm, he could only tap into the potential of his blood and flesh, ultimately transforming it into sword chi and channeling it into his dantian. Only after breaking through the peak of 10th stage and successfully reaching the chi transformation realm could one communicate with the outside world and absorb the spiritual energy in the air. In other words, only swordsmen who had reached the chi transformation realm could use spirit stones. Only then could they absorb the pure spiritual energy within and refine it into their own sword chi. But now, Chu Mu was able to do what a Qi Transformation Realm practitioner could do at the Sword Qi Realm. If news of this got out, who knew what kind of shock it would cause? And Chu Mu could do this entirely because of the external Sword Qi of a Grandmaster Swordsman. This allowed him to control a small range of external Sword Qi. Although he could not absorb the spiritual energy like a Qi Transformation Realm practitioner, he could still absorb it from a spirit stone. However, compared to a Qi Transformation Realm expert, the speed at which Chu Mu absorbed the pure spirit energy from the spirit stones was naturally much slower. However, the sword Qi of a Qi Transformation expert was Xiantian sword Qi. Its purity was dozens of times greater than that of a sword Qi cultivator. Even if Chu Mu's rate of absorption was not fast, it was still enough. Feeling the strands of pure spirit aura enter his body from the stone in his palm and transform into Middle Yuan sword aura, causing his sword aura cultivation to slowly rise. Chu Mu's heart was unbelievably smooth. Unknowingly, his sword chi cultivation had broken through from early 9th stage to mid-9th stage. Pure spiritual energy continued to flow into his body, rapidly transforming from mid-ninth stage to late ninth stage. Time passed bit by bit. This place was rather remote. No one else appeared, and there were no traces of vicious beasts either. Chu Mu had nothing to worry about and focused on cultivating the sword chi manual. Because this was not a cultivation that unlocked one's potential, the number of days he could cultivate was not limited by the 30 major cycles. It also did not place too much of a burden on his meridians. After who knew how long, Chu Mu's sword chi surged again, reaching late ninth stage. The increase in sword chi did not stop, continuing to increase as it advanced towards the peak. With another surge, it reached the peak once more, still increasing. After who knew how much time had passed, Chu Mu only felt that his sword chi could not increase any further. He woke up and left his cultivation state. He exhaled a mouthful of white chi, which shot out like a sword. It whistled as it struck the air, only dissipating after shooting 2 meters away. Chu Mu's eyes shone with a sharp light, unusually forceful. Good, I've finally reached the peak of ninth stage. Even if I meet Wei Hong again, I am confident that I can kill him. If you like this work, you are welcome to come to Qidien.com to vote for me. Your support is my biggest motivation. Chapter 106. With a swoosh, the faint white sword aura cut through the air, leaving a faint trace in the air, and slowly dissipating. A sorrowful cry was heard. A mid-level beast that was equivalent to an 8th-level swordsman was cut in half by the sword aura in an instant. Its body was split into 2, blood spurting out wildly as it fell to the ground and died. The sword aura at the peak of 9th level is not only thicker, but also purer. My overall strength has increased by at least 50%. Most importantly, my current sword aura cultivation can already allow me to use a simplified version of Wind Phase. Chu Mu put his sword back into its sheath and his eyes lit up as he silently spoke. Today was the 20th day since Chu Mu entered the Green Orchid Void Realm. The opening time of the Green Orchid Void Realm was usually a month. According to Elder Luo and the others, when the Green Orchid Void Realm was about to close, there would be a violent tremor accompanied by the darkening of the sky. At that time, no matter what he was doing, he had to let go as soon as possible and rush to the exit of the Void Realm to leave as soon as possible. Otherwise, if he did not leave in time, he would be trapped in the space-time gap along with the Green Orchid Void Realm. Even if Chu Mu left the Green Orchid Void Realm now, he would have no regret. This was because his harvest was not small. 3 stones that contained pure spiritual energy, a gold elemental high-grade sword art, a yellow-grade sword chi art, and over 100 low-grade spiritual herbs and 5 mid-grade spiritual herbs. Such a harvest was definitely one of the best he had ever seen. Strictly speaking, a small portion of Chu Mu's loot was found by himself. Most of them were loot obtained after killing the Green Orchid Sword sect disciples. So far, the number of disciples of the Green Orchid Sword sect who died under his sword had reached 6. However, the total number of disciples who entered the Green Orchid Void Realm was only 20. If I can completely master this golden edge swordsmanship, my strength will definitely increase significantly. However, the advanced swordsmanship is indeed an advanced swordsmanship. The mystery in it is far beyond the middle-grade swordsmanship. Even with my extraordinary perception and talent in swordsmanship, after 10 days of practice, I have only cultivated the basic style of the 13 basic styles. If he wanted Deshang, he would have to spend a lot of time and effort. Only after mastering the 13 basic forms of Deshang can I cultivate the final high-tier killer move. It will be more efficient and the full power of the high-tier killer move can be displayed. The Golden Edge Sword Art, also known as the Golden Edge 13 Styles, referred to the 13 basic styles. Finally, there was only one high-grade killer move. According to Chu Mu's deductions, the power of this high-tier killer move was extremely terrifying. It was very likely to be on par with the simplified wind form. He was filled with anticipation and wanted to learn it immediately. I wonder how eldest senior brother and the others are doing? How's your harvest? He looked at the white clouds drifting in the sky and thought to himself. Then, he withdrew his gaze and drifted forward like a cool breeze. Rumble, an earth-shattering sound rang out. The ground shook violently as if a magnitude 6 or 7 earthquake was about to happen. The sky and the earth were about to turn upside down. What happened? Everywhere in the Qinglan Void Realm, people and beasts looked up at the sky at the same time with a puzzled expression. Is the Qinglan Void Realm about to close? Chumu was slightly stunned and looked puzzled. However, although there was a huge vibration, the sky did not darken. It seemed to be different from what Elder Luo and the others said about the Qinglan Void Realm being about to close. His mind turned rapidly and various thoughts flashed through his mind like lightning. Suddenly he froze. Could it be? Chumu could not help but be slightly excited. His eyes trembled slightly and his body trembled slightly. There was a trace of excitement and anticipation. The fingers of his right hand unconsciously flicked. This was because he remembered that on the way to the Qinglan Void Realm, Elder Luo and the other elders said that there was one point that seemed to be similar to the current situation. He remembered that when Elder Luo and the others said that, they specifically emphasized that the possibility was very small. It was only possible to encounter it if one was lucky. Just like the signs of the Qinglan Void Realm being about to close, there would be a huge vibration but the sky would not darken. Instead, there would be a strange fragrance. That was the sign that the ancient tree of Qinglan was about to appear. The so-called ancient tree of Qinglan, Elder Luo and the others did not know much about it. After all, they had never seen it with their own eyes. They only found relevant records from the history books of the Sword faction. In general, it was a huge ancient tree that only grew in the Qinglan Void Realm. Under normal circumstances, it would not appear, as if it was hidden under the earth of the Qinglan Void Realm. Once it appeared, it meant that there would be a fortuitous encounter. This was because every time the ancient tree of Qinglan appeared, it would bear a Qinglan sacred fruit. The sacred fruit of Qinglan sacred fruit could not improve the cultivation of the sword aura, nor could it improve the attainment of swordsmanship. However, its role could not be ignored by anyone. Anyone would be tempted, even if they were masters of the Qi transformation realm or beyond. It could improve one's cultivation talent. Yes, the only use of the sacred fruit of Qinglan was to improve one's cultivation talent. A truly powerful swordsman not only had to have a strong and profound cultivation of the sword aura, but also had to have superb attainments in swordsmanship. Whether or not the cultivation of the sword aura could be improved faster and become more powerful and profound was directly related to one's cultivation talent. For example, Chu Mu's cultivation talent was only at the 9th level. Even though his cultivation efficiency was more than 3 times higher than others, the speed of his sword aura improvement was still very slow. He had to rely on elixirs many times to improve it. If one's cultivation talent could be improved, even if it was only by 1 level, from the 9th level to the 8th level, the speed of cultivation would be significantly improved. After all, for swordsmen, the use of elixirs to improve their cultivation was only a minority. The real cultivation depended on the accumulation of hard work every day. While Chu Mu was immersed in his thoughts, the huge tremor stopped. A strong and strange indescribable fragrance quickly spread from a distance and went into Chu Mu's nostrils. It suddenly gave birth to an illusion that he was in a sea of flowers. Huge tremor, strange fragrance. Chu Mu was even more excited. At this moment, his usual calmness disappeared like smoke blown away by a strong wind. He could not help but be excited. This meant that the ancient tree of Qinglan had really appeared. If there was an ancient tree of Qinglan, then there would be a sacred fruit of Qinglan. The sacred fruit of Qinglan was a good thing related to one's cultivation talent. Chu Mu had been distressed about how to solve the problem of his low cultivation talent. Now that there was a great opportunity in front of him, how could he let it go? The strange fragrance is coming from that direction. In other words, the ancient tree of Qinglan will appear there. Gradually, Chumu regained his calmness. The sharpness in his eyes was astonishing. Using wind travel, he almost floated up and quickly moved in the direction of the strange fragrance. Other than me, the other people in the Qinglan Void Realm must have felt this huge vibration and smelled this strange fragrance. They must have also guessed that the ancient tree of Qinglan and the sacred fruit of Qinglan are here. This is a good opportunity. Not only can I meet up with my senior brothers, but I can also kill the remaining disciples of Qinglan Sword Sect in one fell swoop. Ancient tree of Qinglan. Sacred fruit of Qinglan. Somewhere in the virtual realm, Wei Hong was killing a high-level beast. He raised his head and looked in the direction of the strange fragrance. His eyes flashed and a strange smile hung on the corner of his mouth. This is a good opportunity. Not only can I kill the disciples of Qingfeng Sword Sect and Qingshui Sword Sect, but I can also get a sacred fruit of Qinglan. After I find a chance to eat it, my cultivation talent will be improved from the 7th level to the 6th level. Crossing a bottleneck, my cultivation speed will be greatly improved, and I will be able to advance to the Qi transformation realm faster. At the same time, the disciples of the 3 major sword sects in various parts of the virtual realm moved quickly in the direction of the strange fragrance. However, the strange thing was that many of the ferocious beasts were prostrating themselves on the ground, looking in the direction of the fragrance. Their eyes flashed with human-like reverence, as if there was a ferocious beast king in the distance that they had to worship. The virtual realm of Qinglan was not very big. In the center of the entire virtual realm, there was an extremely strange scene. After the ground shook violently, a gray branch with the thickness of a little finger broke out of the ground and quickly rushed to the ground, growing longer and thicker quickly. It was like a seed breaking out of the ground, growing into a seedling, and then quickly growing into a small tree. This small tree seemed to have received a huge amount of nourishment within a second. It grew rapidly, becoming taller and thicker. The whole process looked like the growth process of a tree from a seed to a towering tree. It was completed in just a few seconds. Coincidentally, some of the disciples of the 3 major sword sects who were relatively close to here witnessed this scene with their own eyes. They were suddenly shocked to the extreme. Their eyes were wide open and their mouths were wide open. Their bodies were fixed in place as if they had been cast by a spell. The entire brown tree emerged 30 meters above the ground before stopping. Countless branches, both thick and thin, spread out in all directions like a huge umbrella. The branch at the top was extremely sharp, looking like a sharp sword pointing straight to the sky, as if it was going to pierce the clouds. The trunk at the bottom was difficult for 10 people to wrap their arms around. In particular, the entire tree was completely bare. There was not a single leaf to be seen, which made it even more eerie. At this time, even more people rushed over from all directions. When they saw the 30-meter-tall and bare tree, they all stopped in their tracks and stood hundreds of meters away from it. Their faces were filled with shock and disbelief. Is this the ancient wood of Qinglan? Chu Mu stopped about 1,000 meters away from the 30-meter tree and looked up slightly. His pupils contracted slightly, and his face was full of amazement as he said to himself. Like Chu Mu, the other disciples also showed such doubts and amazement. To be continued. If you like this work, you are welcome to come to Qidian. Come to vote for me. Your support is my biggest motivation. Chapter 107. Now, let's just wait for the Qinglan holy fruit to appear. Chu Mu made his move again and quickly approached the ancient tree of Qinglan. There were also others who had the same idea as Chu Mu. One by one, they rushed towards the ancient Qinglan tree as if they were afraid of falling behind. They were afraid that the Qinglan holy fruit would fall into the hands of others if they were one step behind. Suddenly, Chu Mu caught a glimpse of a familiar figure from the corner of his eyes. It was Xiao Qianfeng, and it seemed as if it couldn't be retracted. Chu Mu. Xiao Qianfeng also saw Chu Mu and a smile flashed across his face. He quickly ran towards Chu Mu. His speed was extremely fast, like an arrow leaving a bow. Wherever he passed, the green grass would fall down. "You're here." Chu Mu smiled at Xiao Qianfeng and said softly, "How's your harvest?" "A little bit." The corner of Xiao Qianfeng's mouth faintly curved as he spoke. His eyes flickered with a sharp glint as they fell on Chu Mu. A trace of astonishment flashed through his eyes. "Your harvest isn't bad. Your cultivation unexpectedly reached the peak." Chu Mu looked at Xiao Qianfeng and found that Xiao Qianfeng's sword cultivation had also reached the peak of the 9th level. What's going on? Why can't I get closer?" All kinds of exclamations sounded, alerting Chu Mu and Xiao Qianfeng. They quickly looked over and saw that some elite disciples were trying to get closer to the ancient tree of Qinglan. However, they seemed to be blocked by an invisible wall. They couldn't go any further when they were about 50 meters away from the ancient tree of Qinglan. 50 meters was the limit of the ancient tree of Qinglan's branches. It seemed that the ancient tree of Qinglan was consciously preventing others from getting closer. "Junior brother Chu, junior brother Xiao," a voice called out not far behind them. Chu Mu and Xiao Qianfeng turned around and saw Yuan Wenhua and Wang Tingo. Other than them, there were also 3 elite disciples of the Qingfeng sword sect, including Xie Chunlei. "Second senior brother, third senior brother." Chu Mu and Xiao Qianfeng nodded at everyone. "Oh, you too. Both of you have reached the peak of the 9th level." Yuan Wenhua's eyes suddenly widened as he whispered with a smile on his face, "Well, your current strength should be more powerful than before. This way, we will have a better chance to compete for the Qinglan holy fruit." Chu Mu discovered that although Yuan Wenhua and Wang Tingo were still at the peak of the 9th phase, their auras were much purer than before. Obviously, after entering the Qinglan Void Realm, the two of them had also gained something. When they looked at Xie Chunlei and the others again, they found that their aura fluctuations were also stronger and purer than before. "You haven't seen eldest senior brother?" Chu Mu asked with a frown after scanning the crowd. "No, but with eldest senior brother's cultivation and swordsmanship, he should be fine," Yuan Wenhua said. When Chu Mu was about to say something, a figure jumped into his sight. When he turned his head, he saw Wei Hong standing together with 12 disciples of the Qinglan sword sect. His sharp eyes slowly swept over with a trace of playfulness. "You have to pay attention to this person. His name is Wei Hong. He is the executor of the Qinglan sword sect's conspiracy." Chu Mu whispered so that Xiao Qianfeng, Yuan Wenhua, and the others could hear clearly. "This time, the Qinglan sword sect's conspiracy is to kill all the disciples of the Qingfeng sword sect and the Qingshui sword sect so that the young generation of the 2 major sword sects will die here." "What? No wonder I was attacked by a Qinglan disciple not long after I entered the Void Realm. Fortunately, I reacted in time and killed him." Yuan Wenhua's face turned cold and his anger rose. "However, they want to kill the disciples of our 2 sects? Wishful thinking. No, don't let your guard down." Wei Hong was forced by an elder of the Qinglan sword sect to hide his breath and disguise himself as a level 9 disciple to enter the Void Realm. In fact, his cultivation is at the peak of level 10 and he has mastered at least 1 high-level swordsmanship. "The sword in his hand is also a fake sword," Chu Mu whispered. "What?" Everyone, including Xiao Qianfeng, changed their faces. They all chose to believe Chu Mu and felt that Chu Mu would not joke about such things. The 3 sects have long agreed that every time the Void Realm opens, no disciples above level 9 can enter. This time, the Qinglan sword sect has violated the agreement. It seems that they do not take the 2 major sword sects seriously. This time, after leaving the Void Realm, we must report this matter and put pressure on the Qinglan sword sect together, Wang Tingo said angrily. That's a matter for after we get out. Chu Mu said softly, right now we have two things to do. First, get the holy fruit of Qinglan. Second, kill all the disciples of the Qinglan sword sect and let them suffer the consequences of their actions. What? Everyone was shocked again. If getting the holy fruit of Qinglan was what they were sure of, then the second thing that Chu Mu said was completely unexpected. A level 10 swordsman was not comparable to a level 10 swordsman. Even Xiao Qianfeng himself, who thought that he could kill a level 10 swordsman, did not have the slightest confidence that he could defeat a level 10 swordsman. Brother, the other disciples are not a problem. Killing them is not a problem, but this Wei Hong. Yuan Wenhua's face showed a touch of embarrassment. Don't worry, leave Wei Hong to me. I am sure that I can kill him. The others will be left to you guys, Chu Mu said. In just a few words, the fate of the disciples of the Qinglan sword sect was decided. Brother, don't be impulsive. As long as we leave the void boundary and report this matter, he will naturally be punished, Wang Tingo said quickly. Third senior brother doesn't need to worry. When I was at the early stage of the 9th phase, I already fought with Wei Hong. Therefore, I have complete confidence that I will definitely kill him. Chu Mu said indifferently. His tone and expression were full of powerful confidence, causing others to believe him. That's great, all the junior brothers are here. A surprised voice rang out. Everyone looked over and saw Li Yi floating over. After landing, Li Yi's face was full of joy. However, everyone found that there was a dark red dried blood stain on Li Yi's back. He looked a little weak and pale because of excessive blood loss. Senior brother, you are injured. Yuan Wenhua's face changed and said with concern. Yes, where is Wenrenyun? He is not here. That traitor colluded with Li Donglai of the Qinglan sword sect and attacked me when I was not paying attention. If I did not react fast enough, I am afraid that I would have died under Li Donglai's sword. Li Yi glanced over and his face was full of anger. When the crowd heard this, each and every one of them revealed an incomparably furious expression. Their anger swelled. Damn that Wenrenyun! He betrayed the sword sect and did such a disgraceful thing. He better not show up. Otherwise, I will definitely kill him. Yuan Wenhua said angrily. The others also nodded angrily and were a little scared. Fortunately, their senior brother reacted fast enough. Otherwise, the consequences would be unimaginable. And Li Donglai, we must not let him go. There seemed to be electric arcs jumping in Wang Tingo's eyes. I heard that he also specializes in Thunder Sword Chi arts and Thunder Sword arts. When he shows up, I want to see how strong he is. Wenrenyun and Li Donglai will not show up, Chu Mu said softly. Everyone's eyes fell on his face. After a short pause, he continued to say, They have died under my sword. After a moment of astonishment, a smile appeared on everyone's face. Good. They deserved to die. Li Donglai is the senior brother of the Qinglan sword sect. If the elders of the Qinglan sword sect know that Li Donglai is dead, I wonder how angry they will be. They must be very angry, so angry that they will vomit blood. At the thought of this, everyone could not help but smile. The anger in their hearts also faded a lot. However, these disciples of the Qinglan sword sect still had to die. Where are the other junior brothers? Li Yi glanced over the crowd and asked. I don't know. Maybe some of them have not arrived yet. Yuan Minghua did not say the next sentence, but everyone knew that some of them might have died. Junior brother, it's great that you're still alive. Suddenly, a voice full of surprise rang out. 6 people walked over with large strides. The leading beautiful young woman stared at Chu Mu with a face full of excitement. What do you mean? Do you want junior brother Chu to die to be happy? Yuan Minghua, who was in a gloomy mood, said angrily. His eyes were full of anger. No, you misunderstood. I am very happy that this junior brother is still alive. It was Yao Bifeng of the Qingshui sword sect. She walked in front of Chu Mu and solemnly saluted Chu Mu with her sword. Junior brother, Thank you very much for saving my life. If you did not stop Wei Hong, I am afraid that I would have died under his sword. You are welcome. Chu Mu smiled faintly and said, I will not forget the kindness of saving my life. As a reward, I am willing to help you get the Qinglan holy fruit on behalf of the Qingshui sword sect. Yao Bifeng said with a serious face. This time, Chu Mu was surprised. The Qinglan holy fruit was a rare treasure that no one could refuse. However, Yao Bifeng was willing to give it up and even said that she would help Chu Mu get it. Such a mind was admirable. The other members of the Qingfeng sword sect looked at Yao Bifeng with admiration in their eyes. Yuan Wenhua's eyes flashed with a strange light. If junior brother Chu gets the Qinglan holy fruit and refines it, his cultivation talent will increase. By then, he will become even more powerful. Li Yi smiled and said, It would be a lie to say that they were not tempted by the Qinglan holy fruit. However, they also knew that among the people present, Chu Mu was the strongest. In terms of contribution, he killed the Qinglan sword sect's senior brother Li Donglai. Looking at the huge bag he was carrying, it was estimated that there were many good things in it. In this way, the most qualified person to get the Qinglan holy fruit should be Chu Mu. Before that, let's get rid of the trouble first. Chu Mu faintly smiled and said, What problem? Li Yi did not know about Wei Hong's matter. Senior brother, it's like this. Wang Tingo immediately began to explain. Li Yi's face grew darker and darker until it was as dark as the bottom of a pot. He then looked at Chu Mu. Junior brother, are you sure you can kill Wei Hong? Yes. Chu Mu nodded without hesitation. His tone was very confident, which made Li Yi feel a little relieved. He nodded fiercely and said, Good. Even if we have to pay a price, we must kill all the disciples of the Qinglan sword sect and let them suffer the consequences of their own actions. In my opinion, why don't we join forces? Yao Bifeng's eyes lit up and said, Senior brother, you decide. Chu Mu said, Well, then we Qingfeng sword sect and Qingshui sword sect will join forces to deal with the Qinglan sword sect. Li Yi nodded. At the same time, another disciple of the Qinglan sword sect arrived. Wei Hong said something and a group of people under the leadership of Wei Hong strode over. Very good. The disciples of the Qingfeng sword sect and Qingshui sword sect are all here. Wei Hong's eyes were cold like a poisonous snake, slowly sweeping across the faces of the disciples of the two major sword sections. There was a trace of cold, murderous intent lingering around the faces of the disciples of the two major sword sections. Those who were seen by him were nervous and had their scalps tingling. This is the place where the elite disciples of the two major sword sects will be buried. I'm afraid it's the place where the elite disciples of the Qinglan sword sect will be buried. Although Yuan Wenhua was nervous and vigilant, he did not show any weakness verbally and retorted coldly. Who exactly will be buried here? You'll know soon enough. There's no need to talk nonsense. Wei Hong's face had a touch of ridicule. His eyes fell on Yao Bifeng's face and slid down to Chu Mu's face. The smile on his face became more obvious. Last time you escaped. This time you won't be so lucky. Just as Chu Mu was about to refute, a strange change suddenly occurred. A strange sound was heard and the ancient tree of the Qinglan sword began to change. One by one, green leaves emerged from the ancient tree of the Qinglan sword. In just a few seconds, more and more leaves emerged, densely covering the entire Qinglan ancient tree, covering the sky and the earth. Each leaf was as big as a human palm. There were also 5 sharp protrusions like the 5 fingers of a palm. Moreover, the surface of the leaf was covered with patterns, almost like the palm of a leaf. And at the same time as the leaves appeared, there was a strange and chilling change under the feet of Chu Mu and others. The lush grass full of vitality began to rapidly dry up from afar. It was as if it had experienced the transition of life and death in an instant. The rapid loss of vitality and withering spread like waves. In just less than 10 seconds, The grass within a radius of tens of thousands of meters had completely withered. The originally lush green grass had turned into a withered ash-like land of death, exuding a strong breath of death, making people's hearts palpitate. Chu-Mu and others were shocked. One by one, they stared at the changes under their feet and in front of their eyes in disbelief. It was as if they were in a dream. One by one, their throats wriggled gently. They were so shocked that they could not even say a word. Although there was no wind, the countless palm-like green leaves on the ancient tree of the Qinglan sword swayed, making a soft rustling sound. Soon after, an even stranger scene appeared. As the leaves gently swayed, they actually rapidly lost their green color and withered, as if they had lost their moisture. Chu-Mu and others seemed to be able to see a trace of green gas spreading out from each green leaf, along the branches, and quickly to the sharp branch at the top. At the sharpest point of this sword-like branch, it quickly condensed, as if something was about to be born. The rustling sound became ear-piercing. As the withered leaves swayed, they seemed to be torn apart by an invisible hand. They shattered and scattered down, and then melted away like snowflakes under the scorching sun. At the end of the sharp branch at the top, a little green light emerged and expanded little by little. Under the gaze of everyone, it became solid little by little. In the end, an emerald green fruit the size of a longan condensed and formed. A strong and strange fragrance instantly suffused the air and drilled into everyone's nostrils, causing everyone's spirits to shake and feel refreshed, as if they were on cloud 9. Countless leaves all withered and shattered into nothingness, and the ancient tree of the Qinglan sword became bare again. Only a small but extremely eye-catching green fruit filled everyone's eyes. Qinglan. Holy fruit. If you like this work, you are welcome to come to Qidian. Come to vote for me. Your support is my greatest motivation. Chapter 108. With a bang, all the power in his body surged to his legs like wave. He stomped on the ground fiercely, and with a slight tremor, a circle of formless sword chi rippled out in a ring shape. Everywhere it passed, the withered grass turned into ashes, clearing out an empty space of a few meters. In an instant, Wei Hong turned into a light red rainbow from the ground to the sky. With a trace of scorching heat, he cut through the sky like a meteor. In the blink of an eye, he flew toward Qinglan's ancient tree. His purpose was very simple. He wanted to get the Qinglan's holy fruit in front of others. Once it fell into his hands, Wei Hong firmly believed that no one could take it away from him. This was his confidence in his own strength. Stop him. Li Yi and the others quickly reacted. Their expressions changed greatly. They hurriedly pulled out their swords and shot out sword energy, trying to stop Wei Hong. However, Wei Hong's body made a boom and his speed suddenly increased a lot. It was as if he was suddenly equipped with a rocket propeller. More than a dozen sword energy slashes missed. As soon as Li Yi and the others pulled out their swords, Chu-Mu's body moved and turned into a gust of wind, blowing the surrounding hay into pieces. He was extremely fast. With a whoosh, he chased after Wei Hong. Kill! One of the 13 disciples of Qinglan's sword sect shouted and pulled out his sword, slashing out several sword energy slashes toward Li Yi and the others. A streak of golden light flashed, bringing with it endless sharpness. It was as if even the air was being sliced apart, leaving behind a thin golden line that seemed to extend from one side to the other. One of the disciples of Qinglan's sword sect suddenly stopped. His sword seemed to be frozen in the air. His face suddenly showed a painful expression, and there was a touch of horror and fear in his eyes. A blood line quickly appeared on his neck and expanded. Blood spurted out like a fountain. The golden light flashed. It was Xiao Qianfeng. Xiao Qianfeng, who was at the peak of the 9th phase, was even more terrifying. Just one sword strike was enough to kill a late 9th phase disciple of the Qinglan sword sect. Li Yi and the others were shocked. Yao Bifeng and the others were shocked as well, let alone the disciples of the Green Orchid sword sect. The two of us will deal with him. The rest of you work together to hold on. When senior brother Wei Hong arrives, it will be the time of their death. Qing Lan's sword sect's second senior brother roared. He was shocked and angry. He waved his sword again and again. One after another, sword qi swept out like a storm towards the disciples of Qin Feng's sword sect and Qin Shui's sword sect. In addition to Wei Hong and the one who had just been killed by Xiao Qianfeng, there were still 12 disciples of Qin Lan left. Qin Feng's sword sect had 7 disciples, excluding Chu Mu, and Qin Shui's sword sect had 6, making a total of 13. Most of the disciples of Qin Lan's sword sect were at the late stage of 9th phase. In terms of overall strength, they were indeed better than the disciples of Qin Feng's sword sect or Qin Shui's sword sect. Now, among the 12 disciples of Qin Lan's sword sect, 5 had reached the peak of 9th phase, and the remaining 7 were all at the late stage of 9th phase. In Qin Feng's sword sect, there were 4 at the peak of 9th phase and 3 at the late stage of 9th phase. In Qin Shui's sword sect, there were only 2 at the peak of 9th phase, 2 at the late stage of 9th phase, and 2 at the middle stage of 9th phase. Because Li Yi had not recovered from his injury, he could only use 70% of his strength. As a result, the two sides fought. Xiao Qianfeng, who was the strongest, was jointly attacked by 2 disciples at the peak of 9th phase. It was difficult to defeat them in a short time. The two sides were in a deadlock for the time being. The sword light flashed, the sword shadows flew, and the sword qi swept out. The air was constantly being cut, making sharp whistling sounds. Wherever it passed, the withered grass was broken into pieces, and smoke and ashes were swirling in the air. On the withered ground, scratches were left one after another, spreading to the distance, crisscrossing. Shadows mixed with the sword light crisscrossed and collided. The harsh sound of metal clanging continued. The sword light was dazzling. Occasionally there was a scream, and a stream of blood flew into the sky. It was very eye-catching. Damn this guy, he's so fast. Wei Hong sensed that Chu Mu was quickly catching up behind him. He secretly cursed, drew his sword and waved it back, shooting a few sword qi at Chu Mu. Qinglan's holy fruit is mine, no one can take it away. Chu Mu's body swayed, and like a willow branch in the wind, he circled around in a beautiful arc and dodged a few sword auras. His speed didn't decrease, but instead increased, and the distance between him and Wei Hong shortened a bit. The fingers of his right hand moved gently, and his eyes were sharp, staring at Wei Hong's back, taking in all the surrounding scenery. He was only waiting for a trace of a flaw to appear, and he would immediately draw his sword, hoping to kill the enemy in one blow. At this time, both sides had entered the bottom of the ancient Qinglan tree, close to the branches. The invisible wall before seemed to have never appeared. With a whoosh, Wei Hong rushed to the bottom of the ancient Qinglan tree. His feet stomped on the ground fiercely, and the sword qi made a bang sound. The ground was slightly sunken. Wei Hong's whole body rushed straight up like a rocket, intending to rush to the top of the ancient Qinglan tree before Chu Mu and take the holy fruit of Qinglan tree. The gap between the 7th and 6th grade of cultivation talent was much greater than the gap between the 8th and 7th grade. It was like a huge gap that was difficult to cross. Chu Mu also quickly rushed to the bottom of the ancient Qinglan tree. He gently touched the ground, and his body went straight up, as if he was riding the wind. Suddenly, Chu Mu's heart skipped a beat, and his hair stood on end. There was a strong sense of crisis that hit his body like a bomb, making him numb. Without any hesitation, Chu Mu drew his sword qi, and with a clanging sound, the sword was dazzling. He cleverly cut the trunk next to him, and with the help of the force, his whole body flew to the side. Almost instantly, a dark green arrow filled with a sour odor shot over. The extremely powerful sour odor caused Chu Mu's expression to greatly change. With a single sniff, he knew that there was a shocking poison within. As if even space was being corroded, it left behind a clear trail that passed through Chu Mu's previous position and shot towards the ground. With a poochie sound, The dark green color hit the withered ground and immediately let out an ear-piercing sound. Chu Mu landed on a tree branch and subconsciously turned around to take a look. His pupils rapidly trembled. He saw that the ground was constantly bursting with a strange light green smoke, curling straight up, and the ground quickly sank, like a spark falling on a bubble, quickly melting. At the same time that Chu Mu was inexplicably attacked, Wei Hong was also attacked. A brown figure with the same color as the trunk, like a light, shot toward Wei Hong. Wei Hong only smelled a strong stench, and before he could see what the other party was, it had already rushed in front of him. Subconsciously, he raised his hand and the sword light flashed in front of him. With a clang, the fake sword bent slightly inwards. Wei Hong's expression changed drastically as an incomparably powerful force rushed over. His palm was in pain, as though it was about to be torn apart. He almost lost his grip on the sword in his hand and flew out. His body was also sent flying by the impact of this force, crashing into a tree trunk. His left hand pushed back, and he hurriedly jumped up and landed on a tree trunk. His blood and chi shook, and his face was abnormally red. His eyes were full of shock. Hiss hiss! A strange sound that made one's scalp tingle sounded, and then it instantly fell silent. The air was filled with a shuddering factor. Chu Mu and Wei Hong both felt a chill run down their spines. They couldn't help but shiver, and goosebumps appeared on their skin. Their eyes narrowed slightly, and a sharp light revolved in their pupils. They looked in the direction of the sound, and at first glance, they didn't find anything, but when they looked more carefully, they suddenly saw that it was a python. They saw a python that was about the thickness of a normal person's calf, and it was coiled up on a tree trunk, motionless. Because the color of its body was exactly the same as the color of the tree trunk, when it was motionless, it would give people the illusion that it was a tree trunk, and they wouldn't be vigilant at all. As a result, a sneak attack would succeed. This python, under the careful observation of Chu Mu and Wei Hong, found that there was a small brown horn on its forehead, but it was darker than the color of its skin. Its whole body seemed to be about 2 meters long. Although the sneak attack just now was dodged by Chu Mu and Wei Hong, it made them very vigilant. Too fast, the speed of this python was really too fast. Chu Mu and Wei Hong didn't move, and even their breathing became incomparably slow and long. They were afraid that, if they made the slightest movement, it would attract the python's attack, which wouldn't be a good thing. The sound of fighting in the distance seemed to be very far away, as if it was isolated from them in a different world. When Elder Luo and the others explained, they didn't mention this kind of python. Chu Mu said secretly, he didn't know what kind of python this was, because its breath was restrained, and he couldn't feel it, let alone know the strength of this python. The most important thing was, on this ancient Qinglan tree, was there only one such python, or was there a second or third one? If there were many, that would be the most terrible. Thinking of this, Chu Mu's eyes condensed, and slowly glanced around the other places. The sword qi in his body slowly flowed, his muscles were tight, and his strength was integrated. At any time, he could erupt in an instant, counterattack or dodge. At this time, the corner of his eye caught a glimpse of Wei Hong slowly taking off the bag on his back, infusing it with sword qi and throwing it hard at Chu Mu. Between the whistling of the wind, Chu Mu's spirit seemed to explode, and a sense of crisis arose. The brown figure flashed, and the python quickly rushed to the bag. Without any hesitation, Chu Mu immediately fell down quickly, and landed on the ground in a flash. He hurriedly left the range of the ancient Qinglan tree. The bag was bitten by the python, and dozens of elixirs were scattered. Wei Hong seized this opportunity, raised his sword qi, and hurriedly rushed to the sky, still wanting to pick the Qinglan holy fruit first. The python seemed to be angered, and it let out a roar, strangely twisting its body, piercing the sky, and shooting at Wei Hong like an arrow from the string. Its speed was a bit faster than Wei Hong's. Wei Hong's face changed dramatically, and he hurriedly slashed several sword qi. One by one, The sword chi slashed on the python's body, making a puff sound and breaking. The python was unharmed, and its speed did not slow down. It opened its mouth and spat out a dark green liquid full of sour smell, shooting at Wei Hong like an arrow. Wei Hong gritted his teeth, kicked the trunk hard, and rushed out of the ancient Qinglan tree in the blink of an eye. With the help of the branches, he quickly went down. The python behind him chased after him like a bolt of lightning, causing Wei Hong's scalp to turn numb. He had no choice but to swing his hand and slash out a dense storm of sword chi, bombarding the python's body. Finally, the python's speed was reduced slightly. He ran for his life and flew away at an astonishing speed. When he rushed out of the range of the ancient tree of Qinglan, the brown figure turned in midair and flew towards the ancient tree of Qinglan and disappeared. Thank you. To be continued. If you like this work, you are welcome to come to Qiddian.com to vote for me. Your support is my biggest motivation. Chapter 109. Chu Mu stared coldly at Wei Hong. It was Wei Hong who threw the bag at him, intending to attract the python's attention and take the Qinglan holy fruit first. However, he did not expect that the python was not only incredibly fast, but also not stupid enough to be fooled, causing Wei Hong's plan to fail. Wei Hong's expression kept changing. His face was a little pale, and his heart was filled with shock. Let's work together. Suddenly, Wei Hong turned to look at Chu Mu and said. Without waiting for Chu Mu to respond, he continued, This python is called the dead wood-horned python. It's a high-level beast and its strength is very strong. It's equivalent to a swordsman at the peak of the 10th stage of the sword chi realm. Furthermore, the withered wood-horned python was extremely fast and powerful. Its skin was abnormally tough. Even the 100 refined sword with sword chi attached to it would find it difficult to injure it. Only the fake sword with sword chi attached to it would be able to cause obvious damage to it. In addition, it can spray venom that contains terrible poison. Even a 10th stage swordsman will die within a few breaths. It's extremely terrifying. Under these conditions, the strength of the dead wood-horned python is stronger than the average 10th stage swordsman. I'm not sure if I can kill it alone. Why should I work with you? As long as you want to get the Qinglan holy fruit, you must deal with it unless you give up the fruit, Chu Mu said coldly. For someone like Wei Hong, if he teamed up with him, he might scheme behind his back. Don't you want the Qinglan holy fruit? Wei Hong showed a hint of anger. He almost exploded and killed Chu Mu first. However, he knew that Chu Mu's strength was extraordinary. When he was in the early 9th stage, he could compete with him. Now that he was at the peak of the 9th stage, his strength must be stronger than before. Although he was not as strong as himself, he estimated that he could compete with a 10th stage swordsman. Only by joining forces with Chu Mu would they be able to kill the withered wood-horned python as soon as possible and avoid unnecessary casualties. Let me tell you, the withered wood-horned python's horn has the effect of a medicinal catalyst. After it is ground into powder and consumed together with other spiritual medicines, the medicinal effect of the spiritual medicine can be maximized. After Wei Hong suppressed his anger, he revealed a secret that Chu Mu did not know. That is to say, after obtaining the holy fruit of Qinglan, grinding the horn of the dead wood-horned python into powder can be used as a catalyst to maximize the efficacy of Qinglan. Hearing what Wei Hong said, Chu Mu was immediately moved. Under normal circumstances, it would be considered good if one could absorb 60 to 70% of the medicinal efficacy of a spiritual herb. 30 to 40% of the medicinal efficacy would be precipitated or even eliminated, resulting in a waste. However, if what Wei Hong said was true, then the effects of the holy fruit of Qinglan would be at least 80% or even 90%. In this way, the improvement of one's cultivation talent would be even more obvious. Don't worry, I swear on my honor as a swordsman that I will never do anything to you before killing the withered wood-horned python. Wei Hong said with a serious face. After killing the withered wood-horned python, we will see who gets the holy fruit of Qinglan. Don't tell me you have no confidence in yourself? In the end, Wei Hong tried to provoke him. All right, let's join forces for the time being, Chu Mu said. Wei Hong's eyes flashed with a touch of joy. He thought that Chu Mu was provoked by him. Little did he know that Chu Mu had his own ideas. Chu Mu was determined to get the holy fruit of Qinglan. However, in order to get the holy fruit of Qinglan, he had to deal with the withered wood-horned python. In the beginning, Chu Mu's idea was to seize the opportunity to get the holy fruit of Qinglan while Wei Hong was fighting with the withered wood-horned python. However, now that he heard that the withered wood-horned python's horn could be used as a catalyst, he was naturally tempted. Chu Mu felt that unless he used the simplified version of the state of wind, he would not be able to defeat the withered wood-horned python. However, he only had one chance. Once he used it, his sword aura would be depleted and he would need time to recover. After thinking about it, the best way was to join forces with Wei Hong and let Wei Hong be the main force. He would assist from the side and kill the withered wood-horned python first. As for the so-called honor of a swordsman, it was indeed very important to some swordsmen. However, it was not necessarily the case for some swordsmen. Chu Mu would not take Wei Hong's words seriously. Very well. When the time comes, you will attract the withered wood-horned python's attention and let it attack you. You will temporarily hold the withered wood-horned python while I perform the killing move to severely injure the withered wood-horned python. It will be easier to kill it when the time comes, Wei Hong said quickly, directly defining the roles for himself and Chu Mu. Okay. This was in line with Chu Mu's intention. In this way, he only needed to use his usual strength to fight with the withered wood-horned python and did not need to expose his full strength. It's good that you agree. It seems that the withered wood-horned python will not leave ancient Qinglan, so we have to take the initiative to attack and fight with the withered wood-horned python again. We have to find a chance to kill it. Wei Hong's eyes flashed with a touch of joy. He said, but before that, we have to stop them from fighting. As soon as his voice fell, Wei Hong turned around and shouted, Everyone, stop! The two sides who were fighting fiercely heard the sound like a muffled thunder. Their movements paused slightly and they looked over. As a result, they saw Chu Mu and Wei Hong standing together and had no intention of fighting. They could not help but be stunned and confused. Stop first. This time, the two of us have to work together to kill the withered wood-horned python, Wei Hong said briefly and Chu Mu nodded. Suddenly, everyone understood that there must be a powerful beast guarding the holy fruit of Qinglan on the ancient Qinglan tree. Because it was too powerful, Chu Mu and Wei Hong had to temporarily put aside their hostility and join forces. Since Chu Mu and Wei Hong had temporarily joined forces, there was no need for them to continue fighting. At least for now. However, after the previous battle, both sides had suffered casualties. Seeing that the two sides had stopped fighting, Chu Mu and Wei Hong looked at each other and nodded. They turned into two streamers and quickly flew toward the ancient Qinglan tree. This time, they were all mentally prepared. They wouldn't be in such a sorry state like before. With two whooshing sounds, two figures rushed almost side by side to the ancient Qinglan tree. They used this method to lure the withered wood-horned python out and let it take the initiative to attack. Otherwise, it would not be easy to find it. Sure enough, when Chu Mu and Wei Hong rushed toward the ancient Qinglan tree at the same time, another sour smell spread. A dark green arrow shot toward Wei Hong, and at the same time, a brown figure shot toward Chu Mu like lightning. A strong sense of crisis exploded in his body, making Chu Mu feel a little numb all over. Between the vibration of his blood and qi, Chu Mu channeled the sword qi of the peak of the 9th stage. The sword qi was attached to the blade and poured into the fake Qingfeng sword. The sword qi was crisscrossed and a strong wind blew out. With the fusion of the wind concept, the sword's might was even more powerful. Instantly, it clashed with the brown figure. Chu Mu only felt a powerful collision force come at him. The fake clear wind sword shook, and the sword aura attached to the blade was instantly scattered. His hand went numb, and he had no choice but to use a technique to disperse the force. Under this attack, the withered wood-horned python's body slightly paused and revealed itself. Wei Hong's eyes were filled with a shocking murderous intent. With a low shout, the sword qi attached to the blade slashed out. In an instant, a gorgeous red sword light shot toward the withered wood-horned python. The surrounding air became scorching hot and boiling, making a sizzling sound. Hiss! The withered wood-horned python felt Wei Hong's sword with a strong killing intent. It was suddenly shocked and hurriedly turned its body to retreat. However, its collision with Chu Mu made its body slightly stiffen. When it wanted to turn around to dodge, it was a little slow and was immediately hit by Wei Hong's sword. With a boom, like sparks falling on oil, the fiery red light contaminated the withered wood-horned python and it immediately burned. Under the huge power of the sword, the withered wood-horned python's body fell down like a meteorite. It heavily smashed into the trunk of the ancient Qinglan tree and bounced up. Kill! Wei Hong's eyes widened, as if there were flames erupting from them. His sword turned into a huge fire python as he suddenly used his middle-tier killer move, letting out a rumbling roar as he bit towards the dead wood-horned python. The withered wood-horned python's body shook, and the flames on its skin were dispersed. It opened its mouth and spat out a dark green venom. When it collided with the fire python, it made a sizzling sound and turned into a faint green smoke that rose up in spirals. A sour smell filled the surroundings. Immediately after, the withered wood-horned python's body bent and bounced. The air seemed to be torn apart and there was a loud whistling sound. It turned into a brown lightning bolt and pierced through the remaining fire python and shot toward Wei Hong. It opened its mouth as if it wanted to swallow Wei Hong in one gulp. Chu Mu stabbed out with his sword and it turned into a breeze. With the addition of sword qi, the pseudo-breeze sword became even sharper. It pierced the withered wood-horned python's body, and the sword qi exploded, causing the withered wood-horned python's body to tremble and its speed to decrease abruptly. Wei Hong seized the opportunity and used his intermediate killer move again. He turned into a fire python and let out a loud rumbling sound. The air boiled and exploded again as he charged at the withered wood-horned python. Under the cooperation of the two geniuses, the withered wood-horned python was finally unable to dodge this move and was directly hit by Wei Hong's intermediate killer move. The same killer move would have different power when used by different swordsmen. In addition, there was also the purity of the sword qi and the quality of the sword. There would be an obvious difference. The power of Wei Hong's intermediate killer move was extremely terrifying. With one sword, it directly cut open the withered wood-horned python's tough skin. The intense heat under the incomparably powerful sword qi blasted into the withered wood-horned python's body and burned its blood. The withered wood-horned python's body suddenly trembled and violently trembled. It let out a mournful hiss and was abnormally uncomfortable. Chu Mu lifted his eyelids and a shocking sharpness circulated within. In an instant, the sword turned into 24 chilling murderous intents and swept out. Like a storm of murderous intents, they enveloped the struggling withered wood-horned python. One after another, the murderous intents bombarded the withered wood-horned python's body. Chu Mu's pseudo-breeze sword also pierced out. It paused for a moment as if it had pierced through something tough. The tip of the pseudo-breeze sword pierced into the withered wood-horned python's tough skin. The sword qi surged and exploded, exploding a bloody hole and causing the withered wood-horned python's body to twitch violently. It was injured again. Unforgiving, Wei Hong's pseudo-sword was extremely sharp. Under the fiery red scorching sword qi, each sword slashed out and cut open the withered wood-horned python's skin. Each sword cut open the withered wood-horned python's skin, leaving behind wounds and evaporating all the blood. If it was a one-on-one situation, It would not be so easy to kill the withered wood-horned python. They would have to use all their strength and go through a tough battle. If they were not careful, they might even be injured. However, under the powerful cooperation of Chu Mu and Wei Hong, their strength increased by a lot. The two of them also had a good grasp of the timing of their attacks. With a deliberate plan, the withered wood-horned python ended up in a miserable state. The withered wood-horned python's vitality was abnormally shocking. Even after being injured multiple times, it still did not die. Under its ferocious nature, it actually fought in a suicidal manner. It opened its mouth wide and spat out a large amount of dark green venom like a high-pressure water gun. Chu Mu and Wei Hong were shocked and quickly retreated. No one was willing to touch a trace of the venom. The withered wood-horned python twisted its scarred body and turned into a brown arrow, shooting into the sky. "Oh no, this beast wants to swallow the Qinglan holy fruit." Wei Hong's expression changed greatly. He hurriedly rushed forward and killed it with his sword. Chu Mu did not fall behind. He also rushed into the sky and attacked the withered wood-horned python with his sword. The injured withered wood-horned python became much weaker after spitting out a large amount of venom. Its speed was also much slower. In a short time, Wei Hong and Chu Mu caught up with it. The two swords attacked and once again broke through its tough skin. The sword chi poured in and exploded. Once again, two bloody holes were blasted open and the withered wood-horned python was blown away. To be continued. If you like this work, you are welcome to come to Chidian.com to vote for me. Your support is my biggest motivation. Chapter 110. The Holy Fruit is Mine. Seeing the withered wood-horned python being killed by the two people's dual swords and flying to the side, it could be assumed that even if it wasn't dead, it was at its last breath. Chu Mu and Wei Hong's eyes simultaneously flashed with an intense light. Suddenly, the two of them each stepped on the trunk next to them. Sword chi poured into their legs and burst out with full strength. Between the rumbling sound, they rushed to the top of the ancient tree like two cannonballs. Kill! There was a flash of murderous intent in Wei Hong's eyes. The fake sword crossed the sky and turned into a flaming rainbow, trying to kill Chu Mu or block Chu Mu so that Chu Mu would fall behind. Chu Mu had expected Wei Hong's approach, but he did not fight back. The wind was integrated into the movement of the wind. His whole body drifted with the surging hot air. With the help of the surging air, his speed suddenly increased and he was one step ahead. Wei Hong did not know that his sword would cause such a result. He was suddenly shocked and hurriedly waved several scorching hot sword chi in an attempt to slow down Chu Mu's speed. However, Chu Mu's attitude was unusually firm. He wanted to be the first to pick the holy fruit of Qinglan. Now that he was one step ahead of Wei Hong, how could he be willing to fall behind? Suddenly, he felt the scorching hot sword chi behind him. His speed increased slightly, but he still could not exceed the speed of the sword chi. Suddenly, the sword chi turned into an armor to protect his back. There was a burst of sound. Several of Wei Hong's sword chi all slashed on Chu Mu's sword chi armor, making a terrible burst sound. The sword chi armor suddenly broke. Wei Hong was overjoyed. His original intention was to let Chu Mu avoid the sword chi so that his speed would be reduced and he would be able to overtake him. After that, he would be the first to pick the Qinglan holy fruit and then kill Chu Mu. However, he did not expect that Chu Mu would not hesitate to use his sword chi to resist his sword chi in order to get the fruit first. If the two cultivators' sword chi cultivation levels were the same, it wouldn't be wrong to do so. However, the problem was that there was a huge gap between their sword chi cultivation levels. This wasn't just a difference in quantity, but also a difference in purity. Once you're injured, not only will the Qinglan holy fruit fall into my hands first, but it will also be easier for me to kill you. Wei Hong was secretly delighted. The last scorching hot sword chi blasted on Chu Mu's back. There was a burst of sound. Chu Mu's speed increased a little in an instant, and he took advantage of the momentum to once again increase the distance between him and Wei Hong. Strangely, Chu Mu was not injured. It was as if the sword chi was illusory. Wei Hong's eyes widened, and his eyeballs almost fell out. Impossible! Wei Hong immediately exclaimed. Even he could not withstand the bombardment of the sword chi in the case of the broken sword chi armor, but Chu Mu took it head-on and was unharmed. He did not know that Chu Mu had the second level of the sword chi protection secret technique, the invisible sword chi. Although the sword chi defeated the invisible sword chi for a moment, it did not hurt Chu Mu. Instead, it created a force that propelled Chu Mu even faster. In a flash, Chu Mu rushed to the top of the ancient tree of Qinglan. He was 1 foot ahead of Wei Hong. The tip of his foot gently touched the thin branches next to him, and he flew straight up, stabbing the Qinglan holy fruit at the top. Look, it's junior brother Chu. He's going to get the Qinglan holy fruit. Li Yi and the others were suddenly overjoyed. Since Chu Mu and Wei Hong teamed up, they had been watching closely. When they saw Chu Mu and Wei Hong fighting a fierce beast that looked like a python in the ancient tree of Qinglan, they were very nervous. Finally, when they saw both sides rushing to the top of the ancient tree of Qinglan, their goal was the Qinglan holy fruit. They held their breath and subconsciously clenched their hands. Their hearts were in their throats, and they were so nervous that cold sweat broke out on their foreheads. Especially when they saw Chu Mu take the bombardment of Wei Hong's sword chi, they almost fainted. Now, when they saw Chu Mu rushing up and stabbing the Qinglan holy fruit with his sword, they were suddenly very happy. On the other hand, the disciples of the Qinglan sword sect were a little depressed. It seemed that the Qinglan holy fruit was going to fall into the hands of the other party. This was an outcome that they could not accept. Although senior brother Wei Hong would definitely snatch it back, no one could guarantee that he would not destroy the Qinglan holy fruit when he knew that he could not keep it. In that case, naturally, no one would get the fruit. Damn it! Wei Hong's face was incomparably gloomy, as if water was about to drip out of it. There was an astonishing killing intent condensing in his eyes and shooting out. With a low roar, sword chi surged, incomparably violent, and the air around him instantly became incomparably hot. In an instant, the sword in Wei Hong's hand seemed to have disappeared and turned into a flaming python. As it burned fiercely, it let out a roar. The rumbling sound was as if it was breaking through space. The air exploded and vibrated. This sword was more powerful than the one he used to deal with the dead wood-horned python. Obviously, Wei Hong's murderous intent had erupted and he no longer held back. He wanted to kill Chu Mu with a single blow. Wei Hong's desperation was within Chu Mu's expectations. The prepared sword aura from 6 meters away was completely mobilized, and it let out a rumbling roar. Like the surging waters of a long river, it surged like a tide and charged towards the incoming fire python. Chu Mu knew that even if all of his sword aura exploded from 6 meters away, he still wouldn't be able to deal with Wei Hong's full-power middle-stage killer move. However, his goal was only to buy himself a breath of time. That was enough. As expected, the powerful fire python killer move started to sway under the impact of the surging sword chi. Its speed decreased slightly. Wei Hong's expression changed and he let out a roar. The pseudo-sword suddenly pierced forward, and under the full force of the explosion, it directly broke the sword chi and continued to attack Chu Mu. He would not stop until he was dead. Chu Mu's pseudo-Qingfeng sword pierced forward as if it came from the sky. It was elegant and calm, and it was reflected in the pupils of the people in the distance, leaving an indelible impression. The incomparably sharp tip of the sword had already cut off the connection between the Qinglan holy fruit and the end of the branch. The sword trembled slightly and the fruit flew into Chu Mu's hand. Chu Mu's body was like a big bird circling around, following the turbulent airflow, and flew to the other side, allowing Wei Hong's mid-level killer move, the flaming python, to attack from the side. He quickly descended and sheathed his sword. He took out an empty small sandalwood box from his arms, and put the Qing Lan holy fruit in it before stuffing it into his arms. Although the sandalwood box was not very effective in preserving elixirs like the Qing Lan holy fruit, Chu Mu could only do so for the time being. Once he left the Qing Lan void realm, he would immediately find a chance to eat the Qing Lan holy fruit. After quickly putting it away, Chu Mu gently stepped on a branch and flew out of Qing Lan ancient tree. Don't even think about escaping. Wei Hong, who was in the air, was furious. His chest was full of anger, like a volcano that was about to erupt and destroy everything. His eyes were wide open, and there was a strong anger burning in them, as if he wanted to turn Chu Mu into ashes. With a loud roar, Wei Hong's fire sword chi of the 10th level burst out fiercely like a volcano erupting, turning into a torrent of magma. The desire to kill Chu Mu had completely filled Wei Hong's heart. He even regretted that he proposed to join forces with Chu Mu to deal with the dead wood-horned python first. If he had dealt with Chu Mu first and killed Chu Mu, he would have killed the remaining disciples of Qinfeng sword sect and Qinshui sword sect. After recovering, he would have gone all out to deal with the dead wood-horned python. He would have been able to kill it at all costs. At that time, the Qing Lan holy fruit would have fallen into his hands and there would be no other changes. But now, the Qing Lan holy fruit was taken away by Chu Mu. Once Chu Mu knew that he was no match for him, he might go crazy and eat or destroy the Qing Lan holy fruit. At that time, even if he killed Chu Mu, he would not be able to get the Qing Lan holy fruit. Therefore, he had to kill Chu Mu and take back the Qing Lan holy fruit before Chu Mu made any other move. With this thought in mind, Wei Hong completely ignored the consumption of his sword chi at this time and attacked with all his might. His whole body seemed to have turned into a fire python roaring and rushing out of the ancient tree of Qinglan. With a loud roar, he chased after Chu Mu. Then, the pseudo-sword slashed continuously. Powerful sword chi with a bit of the fire python made a roaring sound and swooped down crazily. The surrounding air was compressed and became scorching hot because of the high temperature. The water in the air evaporated and turned into countless white smoke spiraling around like clouds. In the clouds, there seemed to be a fire python roaring and rolling, rushing towards Chu Mu as if it wanted to tear Chu Mu into pieces. The power of a 10th phase peak swordsman when he was angry was really terrifying and appalling. Li Yi and the others' hearts were once again in their mouths. They could not make a sound, only a face of shock and horror. They were worried about Chu Mu's situation. Xiao Qianfeng's heart was even more shocked. Wei Hong's strength made him extremely shocked. He was very strong, very strong. He was already sure that if he was in Wei Hong's position, even if he used all his strength, he would not be a match for Wei Hong. Xiao Qianfeng's eyes became sharper and more aggressive. Wei Hong's strength not only did not affect him but also aroused his fighting spirit. His fighting spirit and his sharpness were endless. Kill him! Kill him! Kill him! The disciples of the Qinglan sword sect clenched their fists and shouted. Chu Mu could clearly feel the incomparably powerful and scorching sword aura coming from his back. It rumbled with a terrifying might as it slashed towards him. Once he was hit, his sword aura armor would be unable to withstand it. Moreover, the formless sword aura was still recovering. Therefore, no matter what, he could not be hit. Thinking up to this point, Chu Mu's body faintly moved, as if he had misjudged his position. Using wind travel, he strangely moved horizontally, dodging Wei Hong's sword aura attack. Boom, boom, boom. One after another, the powerful red sword chi bombarded the withered and dead ground. Suddenly, countless pieces of soil shot out in all directions. The withered grass turned into ashes and then completely disappeared, leaving behind one after another huge hole. It was a ghastly sight. There was even a trace of smoke at the edge of the hole. Under the fusion of the concept of wind, Windwalker became even more unpredictable. Chu Mu's figure drifted and changed, making Wei Hong unable to catch it. The fake sword in his hand could not launch another powerful attack. His eyes were filled with murderous intent as he stared at Chu Mu's drifting back. His pupils were constantly shrinking, trying to figure out Chu Mu's movements and kill him with a sword attack. However, Chu Mu, who was under the concept of wind, was erratic. For Wei Hong, who had not comprehended it, it was so unpredictable that he could not catch it. He could only watch Chu Mu quickly fall to the ground. To be continued. If you like this work, you are welcome to come to Chidian.com to vote for me. Your support is my biggest motivation. Chapter 111. I have to put enough distance between Wei Hong and myself before I can mobilize all the sword qi in my body and use the simplified version of wind to kill Wei Hong with one sword strike. Chu Mu thought to himself. He did not hold back at all as he merged the 30% of the concept of wind into his movement technique. His figure was unpredictable as he quickly landed on the ground. After landing and touching the ground, his body once again floated up and turned into a gust of wind, quickly blowing forward. However, the burning sensation behind him followed closely like a shadow, letting Chu Mu know that Wei Hong was still not far behind him. Once he slowed down, he would immediately be attacked like a volcano erupting. What a pity! If I had the sword qi cultivation of a 10th stage sword qi, I would be able to directly use the simplified version of wind. I would not need any preparation time and would be able to kill Wei Hong with one sword strike. Chu Mu sped up and rushed forward as he thought to himself, however, if I had the sword qi cultivation of a 10th stage sword qi, I would not need to use the simplified version of wind. Just my other sword techniques would be enough to kill Wei Hong. If Wei Hong knew that Chu Mu was still thinking about this, he would probably be so angry that he would vomit blood. Wei Hong was in a spurt of energy. Under the support of his anger, his speed exploded again and again, constantly trying to close the distance between him and Chu Mu. However, Chu Mu's figure was not only fast but also fleeting. The slight tremors made it impossible for Wei Hong to catch up and lock onto him. No, this guy's movement technique is better than mine and his speed is faster than mine. It is difficult to catch up with him. If I continue like this, my sword qi will continue to be consumed. Once too much is consumed, it will be even more difficult to kill him. The anger in Wei Hong's eyes was slightly reduced as he calmed down a little. His speed was also a little slower. He immediately shouted, Chu Mu, I advise you to obediently hand over the holy fruit of Qing Lan and I can spare your life. Otherwise, even if your movement technique is outstanding and you can escape now, I will wait for you at the exit of Qing Lan Virtual Realm. Unless you don't want to leave the virtual realm, otherwise. Wei Hong didn't need to say anything else. He believed that Chu Mu would be able to understand his meaning. Chu Mu's body's figure turned to face Wei, but his body continued to float and continued to drift backward. He looked indifferent as he stared at Wei Hong without the slightest fear. The distance between him and Wei Hong was constantly increasing. It was about 50 or 60 meters before he stopped. Wei Hong, after I learned about the conspiracy of Qinglan Sword Sect, I decided to kill all the disciples of Qinglan Sword Sect. Chu Mu stared at Wei Hong and said slowly, So, I will not escape. You don't need to wait for me at the exit of the virtual realm. I will kill you here and you will die under my sword. Ha 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 ha. That's ridiculous. Wei Hong was stunned at first, then he laughed. He laughed so hard that tears flowed out of the corners of his eyes. He felt that this was the funniest thing he had ever heard in his entire life. With your insignificant cultivation at the peak of the 9th phase, you dare to say that you can kill me. Do you think that just because you were able to contend against me before, you have the qualifications to do so? Naive, you are too naive. Do you know that at that time I did not show my true strength? Wei Hong's voice was very loud and spread far and wide. It fell into the ears of everyone hundreds of meters away. Suddenly, many people looked at each other. Who is the naive one? You will know soon. Chu Mu said lightly. He raised his eyelids and there was an amazing cold light shooting out. There was also a touch of faint cyan in his pupils. The sword chi in his whole body was mobilized and the 30% of the sword essence of wind was exerted to the extreme without reservation. Gusts of wind were produced around his body out of thin air, constantly blowing. Chu Mu's black hair fluttered in the air, making a rustling sound. Chu Mu's cyan robe danced crazily, making a flapping sound. Around him, on the grayish-brown ground, countless dried grass that had lost its vitality rose into the sky and turned into countless black debris, dancing with the wind and filling the sky. It was an amazing scene. Streaks of faint cyan, like sword light, surrounded the surroundings. They seemed to blow without any pattern, cutting through the air and making sharp whooshing sounds. The faint cyan in Chu Mu's pupils became more and more obvious. It gradually spread out and filled his eyes. Chu Mu's body trembled strangely. His feet actually slowly left the ground and rose into the air, as if he was being gently lifted up by an invisible hand. The range of the faint cyan wind became bigger and bigger, and its influence became wider and wider. From the initial 10 meters, it expanded to 20 meters, 30 meters, and then it expanded to 40 meters, and then to 50 meters. What is going on? Everyone was incomparably shocked and couldn't believe it. The scene in front of them was like a demonic art. What a shocking aura! Xiao Qianfeng exclaimed in admiration. There was an extremely strong battle intent in his heart that soared to the heavens. Everyone's eyes seemed to be filled with cyan. Only the faint cyan wind was blowing in the sky and earth. There was no room for anything else. When Wei Hong saw the changes in Chu Mu, he felt the aura in the air and felt the increasingly strong wind in front of him. He couldn't hide the shock on his face. At the same time, a bad premonition emerged in his heart. His intuition told him that if he allowed Chu Mu to continue, his aura would become stronger and stronger. At that time, he might be in danger. This won't do. I have to kill him now. A trace of seriousness flashed in Wei Hong's eyes. The remaining sword chi in his dantian completely exploded. It surged and shook like a flood of magma rushing into his meridians. It was quickly transported, and as if it was overloaded, it poured into the fake sword in his hand. With a whoosh, as if a flame had been ignited, a bright red flame sprang out from the fake sword and burned fiercely. The surrounding air was roasted until it boiled like boiling water. The wind that blew over also became scorching hot. Although my fire python sword technique lacks the final high-grade killing move, after so many years, I have already merged it with Deshang. Moreover, I have already merged it with various fire attribute sword techniques in the past to modify and strengthen the mid-grade killing move. Next, I will use my full strength to attack. Giant Fire Python Frenzy. Chu Mu, you must die. Wei Hong roared in his heart. The aura of his entire body exploded. He was like an erupting volcano that wanted to destroy everything around him. A terrifying roar shook the air. It made everyone feel as if their heads were ruthlessly slapped by an invisible hand. They couldn't help but cover their heads with their hands. Following that, the sword in Wei Hong's hand seemed to have disappeared. His body also seemed to have disappeared. He turned into a giant fire python. It was vivid and lifelike, just like a real ferocious beast. The entire fire python was at least 10 meters long and as thick as a washbasin. It opened its bloody mouth and let out a terrifying roar. It was like a torrent of magma was surging and shaking, causing the air to explode. It was earth-shattering, and earth-shattering. It was as if the air had been ignited, letting out countless exploding sounds like firecrackers. Amidst the loud rumbling sounds, the enormous fire python swallowed up the blowing wind and charged towards Chu Mu with an extremely terrifying might. Chu Mu seemed so small in front of this giant fire python. It made people feel that in an instant, the fire python would swallow Chu Mu whole and turn him into ashes. Wind, colorless and formless. It is all-pervasive and contains astonishing sharpness. When the wind blows, when the wind sounds, it is the moment of killing intent and death. As if there was a voice in his heart, the wind that blew around him suddenly stopped. It was as if it had solidified, along with the surrounding space and time. Everyone only felt that an extremely strange scene had appeared in front of their eyes. Chu Mu's figure, the light green surrounding him, and the giant fire python that was full of destruction seemed to have frozen together, becoming an eternal picture. Wind manifestation. Chu Mu's lips moved slightly as he softly spat out 3 words. They were like a cool breeze. Soon after, he drew his sword and slashed out. All the frozen wind seemed to have thawed at this moment. It surged violently as Chu Mu swung his sword. All of the wind rushed forward violently. Woo-woo sounds continuously rang out. It was like the weeping sound of the wind blowing through the valley in the middle of the night. Suddenly, the weeping sound turned into a roar. It was like a gale blowing through the valley. Then, it turned again and slowly blew over, turning into a cool breeze. Wind manifestation, gale, cool breeze, all kinds of wind appeared. Wind and wind changed, wind and wind converged. Under the wind manifestation, the wind blew. The giant fire python suddenly stopped. The flames on its body swayed wildly. Strands of sparks were constantly blown up, dissipating in the air like smoke. The giant fire python rapidly shrank at a speed visible to the naked eye, as if it was shrinking. With just a flash, the giant fire python became faintly discernible. Wei Hong's posture of holding his sword and thrusting with all his strength gradually appeared. His speed became slower and slower, and his face was filled with disbelief and shock. It was hard to imagine that Chu Mu's sword had broken the strongest sword that he was so proud of. Under the wind manifestation, Wei Hong only felt that he could not look directly at his eyes. The wind blew until it hurt. He could not help but close his eyes tightly. Tears seeped out of the corners of his eyes. He could not breathe through his nostrils. It was blocked by the blowing wind. It suddenly rushed in, making his nasal cavity feel like it was being cut and stirred by knives. It was unbearable. Because he could not breathe, he subconsciously opened his mouth. The wind blew into his mouth, making his throat dry. It was like a knife strangling his throat, causing a burning pain. In an instant, Wei Hong felt like he was being tortured. There was not a single part of his body that did not feel uncomfortable. Suddenly, the intuition of many years of sword practice told him that there was a great danger approaching. Without any hesitation, the little remaining sword qi in his dantian completely erupted. It rushed out of his body. The sword qi formed an armor, condensing into a faint red color to protect him. In the blowing wind, there was an extremely cold, killing intent that was faintly discernible. It was unpredictable and abnormal. It suddenly appeared and attacked from the side, aiming for Wei Hong's neck. With a crack, Wei Hong's sword qi armor was instantly cut open. Before he had time to be shocked, he felt a pain in his neck. It was cut open by an extremely sharp killing intent. His head was blown back by the wind and blood spurted out. It was also blown back by the wind and covered his body. Wei Hong's headless corpse was blown back by the wind like a broken bag. It flew back more than 10 meters before it landed on the ground. The whistling wind slowly stopped and gradually quieted down. Chu Mu landed on the ground again. The faint green color in his eyes disappeared and was quickly replaced by a strong sense of exhaustion. It spread to his entire face. His face was pale and weak. His body was powerless. He almost could not hold the fake clear wind sword in his hand, and it fell to the ground. His body swayed slightly and he almost fell. However, he held on with his strong willpower. Dead. Whether it was the disciples of Qinglan sword sect, Qingfeng sword sect, or Qingshui sword sect, when they saw Wei Hong die under Chu Mu's sword, they all swallowed hard. Their eyes were like toads and their mouths were wide open. Brother Wei is dead. Avenge him. Suddenly, a disciple of Qinglan was the first to wake up and react. However, He said something stupid and woke the others up. Kill! Xiao Qianfeng shouted and drew his sword. He unexpectedly killed a disciple of Qinglong beside him. Li Yi and the others woke up one by one. They broke out with all their strength and attacked the surrounding disciples of Qinglong. Sword light flashed and the killing intent was cold. A massacre began. To be continued. If you like this work, you are welcome to come to Qigyan.com to vote for me. Your support is my biggest motivation. Chapter 112. A figure quickly rushed out of the crowd and rushed towards Chu Mu, intending to kill Chu Mu. He felt that Chu Mu was motionless at this time, most likely unable to move. It was the best time to kill him. Xiao Qianfeng caught a glimpse of the figure from the corner of his eye and suddenly turned into a pale golden light, piercing the sky with his sword. The Qinglong sword sect will not let you go. The last threat was shrill, a pale golden light flashed, and abruptly stopped like a duck being choked by the neck. The last disciple who tried to kill Chu Mu glared at Xiao Qianfeng with eyes full of unwillingness and resentment. His body slowly fell back and died. The blood that flowed out soaked his body and seeped into the dry ground. Xiao Qianfeng shook off the blood on his sword and glanced at it. The sharpness in his eyes was extremely threatening. He withdrew his gaze and looked at Chu Mu, sheathing his sword. The elite disciples of the Qinglong sword sect are finally all dead. Yuan Wenhua breathed a sigh of relief. He only felt a kind of exhaustion and weakness. Both the sword aura and physical strength in his body had been greatly consumed. Li Yi's face was even paler. The wound on his back had not healed and now it was torn again, oozing a lot of blood and staining the back of his clothes red. However, under his tired expression, there was a bit of excitement. The same expression appeared on the faces of everyone who was still alive. The 13 elite disciples of the Qinglong sword sect were all at the late and peak of the 9th stage. At this time, not a single one of them was left alive. They were all turned into 13 corpses lying on the ground. Their blood became the nutrients that soaked the dry ground. The eyes of the 13 corpses were full of unwillingness and resentment. Their expressions were ferocious like evil spirits, staring at the sky as if they were silently asking why. Why did they end up like this? Should this not happen to the disciples of the Qinfeng sword sect and the Qingshui sword sect? Killing these elite disciples of the Qinglong sword sect, especially at the end when they knew that they would not be able to leave this place alive, caused a lot of damage to the Qinfeng sword sect and the Qingshui sword sect. The Green Edge sword sect originally consisted of Li Yi, Yuan Hua, Wang Tingo, Xiao Qianfeng, and Xie Chunlei. However, Xie Chunlei was the only one left out of the 3 of them. Moreover, he had lost an arm. Fortunately, it was his left hand that was cut off and not his right. Otherwise, his swordsmanship would have been crippled. As for Qingshui sword sect, the loss was even greater. 2 elite disciples at the late stage of the 9th level and 2 at the middle stage of the 9th level were all killed, leaving only Yao Bifeng and another disciple at the peak of the 9th level alive. Originally, most of the elite disciples of the Qingshui sword sect had died under the sword of Wei Hong. Now, after this battle, only 2 people survived in the end. Both of them suffered some minor injuries. This loss was also very heavy. It could be said that it was the worst loss that the 3 major sword sects had ever suffered when entering the Qinglong Void Realm. Even though they had won, there was still a sense of sadness in their hearts. All of this was because of the conspiracy of the Qinglong sword sect. If the Qinglong sword sect did not have such a conspiracy, at least a dozen disciples from each sword sect would have left the Void Realm alive. Everyone took out the energy recovery pill and threw it into their mouths to recover their sword chi. Those who were injured also used the hemostasis pill to stop bleeding and heal their wounds. Xie Chunlei, who had lost his left arm, looked frighteningly pale. The wound was dripping with blood, and the pain made him gasp for breath. After some time, Chu Mu's physical strength recovered a little and he could barely move. He sheathed his sword, took out some energy recovery pills, and swallowed them. He sat down cross-legged and channeled the Zhongyuan sword qi, turning it into a gentle qi that flowed in his meridians, restoring his sword qi. All of the energy recovery pills were refined, and a small part of the sword qi was restored. Chu Mu immediately took out a stone that contained pure spiritual energy and held it in his hand. He channeled the sword qi and absorbed it. The recovery speed of the sword qi had obviously increased by several times. Not long after, the sword qi of the peak of the 9th level was completely restored. However, the physical and mental consumption had only recovered a small part, but it was enough to support Chu Mu's normal movements. Putting away the stone that contained pure spiritual energy, Chu Mu quickly got up and looked back. He found that all the disciples of the Qinglan sword sect were dead. He withdrew his gaze and glanced at Wei Hong's body. In a flash, he appeared next to Wei Hong's body. 5 energy training pills, 20 energy recovery pills, and 15 hemostasis pills. There was also a yellow-level upper-grade fire sword qi manual and a pseudo-sword. These were the spoils that Chu Mu got from Wei Hong. As for the other elixirs and the like, they had been thrown out by Wei Hong as bait and were torn apart by the horned python. The energy recovery pills and the hemostasis pills were the upgraded versions of the energy recovery pills and the hemostasis pills. Naturally, the effect was much better and the value was higher. However, what really made Chu Mu happy was the yellow-level upper-grade fire sword qi manual and the pseudo-sword. Pseudo-fire python sword. Chu Mu stared at the words on the pseudo-sword and read, "It seems that this should be a replica of the real fire python sword. Yes, I used to practice dual swordsmanship for a period of time. When I return to the sword sect, I will take some time to review and master the dual swordsmanship. This way, I will be able to use dual swordsmanship against enemies in the future. As for this yellow-level upper-grade fire sword qi manual, it is not of much use to me. However, I will keep it first. Who knows, it might come in handy in the future." The value of a yellow-level upper-grade sword qi manual was extraordinary. It far exceeded the value of a yellow-level middle-grade sword qi manual. Even in the Qingfeng sword sect, yellow-level upper-grade sword qi manuals were rare. Whether it was to contribute to the Qingfeng sword sect, give it to his family, or keep it for himself, it was a good choice. He casually drew a few sword flowers and familiarized himself with the fake fire python sword in his hand. He sheathed the sword and tied it to his back. Then, he tidied up everything else and grabbed his fake Qingfeng sword. He strode towards the ancient tree of Qinglan. Chu Mu's target was the horn on the forehead of the deadwood horned python that was heavily injured by the two of them. His body turned into a gust of wind and quickly blew towards the ancient tree of Qinglan. After a careful scan, Chu Mu found the deadwood horned python that was hanging limply on a tree trunk. The deadwood horned python looked very miserable. There were 3 to 4 holes on its body that were caused by Chu Mu and Wei Hong's sword qi. There were also more than 10 cuts on its body. It was a ghastly sight, and there were even some burn marks around the wounds. However, Chu Mu could still feel a faint breath from the deadwood horned python's body, indicating that it was not completely dead yet. What an amazing vitality! Chu Mu sighed. The more powerful the beast, the more tenacious its vitality. With a clang, he drew his sword and slashed out a sword qi. With a puff, the deadwood horned python's body was sent flying. At the same time, a mouthful of dark green venom was shot towards Chu Mu like an arrow. However, because the distance was too far, the venom fell to the ground before it could reach Chu Mu, corroding a hole in the dry ground. What a cunning and ferocious thing! Chu Mu was slightly surprised. Fortunately, he was vigilant enough to send out a sword qi to test the waters. Otherwise, if he got too close, he would probably be counterattacked. Once the venom touched his body, he would probably die. He slashed out a few more sword qi, and all of them hit the deadwood horned python's body. The deadwood horned python was sent flying, but it did not make any other movements. The remaining breath was completely annihilated. After confirming that the deadwood horned python was truly dead, Chu Mu approached it with ease. However, he was still highly vigilant. Staring at the horn on the deadwood horned python's forehead, Chu Mu immediately waved his sword and cut off the horn like a carving. With a light flick of his sword, the horn fell into his hand. The horn was not big, only as long and thick as a thumb. There was no blood or flesh on it, which showed Chu Mu's unparalleled control over the sword in his hand. Looking at the horn, Chu Mu did not see anything special about it. However, since Wei Hong said so, there should be some basis. After returning to the sword sect, he might be able to find out if he checked the relevant books. He wrapped up the horn and placed it in his arms, then swept his gaze over the deadwood horned python's corpse. Originally, the body of such a high-level fierce beast was also very valuable, especially the skin, which was extremely tough and could be made into inner armor and so on. However, the injuries on the deadwood horned python were too serious. The skin was broken and was not of much use. Chu Mu naturally did not bother to peel it off. At this moment, another strange change occurred. The bare ancient Qinglan tree suddenly trembled, causing the surrounding ground to shake and make a rumbling sound, which immediately attracted everyone's attention. Then, the ancient Qinglan tree shrank rapidly as it shook. In just a few breaths, the original height of 30 meters shrank to 20 meters, and then quickly shrank to 10 meters. After a while, under everyone's eyes, the entire huge Qinglan ancient tree shrunk to the size of a finger. With a swoosh, it disappeared under the dry and dark ground, leaving not even a trace. This! Chu Mu and the others were shocked. Whether it was the way the ancient Qinglan tree appeared or disappeared, it was extremely shocking. It felt as inconceivable as a spell, completely beyond their understanding. If it were not for the harvest and the surrounding corpses, they would have thought that everything just now was just an illusion, like a dream. Exhaling a turbid breath, Chu Mu withdrew his gaze and the shock in his heart gradually calmed down. Then, he looked at Xiao Qianfeng and the others and strode over. Wei Hong was dead, and the elite disciples of the Qinglan sword sect should all be dead. In the entire Qinglan void realm, only the disciples of the Qingfeng sword sect and the Qingshui sword sect were still alive, but the void realm of Qinglan was not closed. This meant that these people could join forces and form a team to sweep the entire void realm of Qinglan and find all the valuable things and bring them out. Sometimes, victory and defeat, life and death, were so simple and direct. To be continued. If you like this work, you are welcome to come to Qidian. Come to vote for me. Your support is my biggest motivation.